Hey, welcome to the upgrade. My name is Gary Muttley, and I am joined, as always, by my highly esteemed co-host,
Len Carmichael, Landmine Studios.
What's up, Len?
Another sleepless night, another restless day, just arguing with people on the internet and trying to get some actual work done for my regular job, but everything is a distraction.
Yeah, it was an exciting, hot weekend.
Bro, it was so hot.
I know.
I couldn't even get over it. Like, you walk outside and it's like it punched you right in the gut.
Yep.
There's absolutely, like, I'm not a small, skinny man. It is not easy to go outside when you're fat. It's just not.
Trust me, I completely understand. But
and
yeah,
it was just like, it's painful. Thank God. So last year my air conditioner blew up at my house.
Oof.
And I got the hookup though. I got the family hookup, and the guy came through and marked my unit outside as struck by lightning. And my insurance paid for it.
Oh, wow.
So, like, there's no saying that it wasn't struck by lightning, but I can't guarantee that it was either. But he said it was, and they signed off on it, so they paid the whole thing. I spent like $200 for my deductible, and I got a brand new hotel grade, like 3 times the size of the house, compressor outside.
Wow.
So this sucker just keeps up. It's ice cold in here right now. Ice cold. I mean, like, you could chill. Like, I have cans of soda, like, in those big packs sitting in front of one of the air conditioner vents because I don't have to put them in the refrigerator. That's how cold it was. Oh, man.
That's awesome. I wish I had a setup like that.
It's tight. It's tight.
Oh, listen, if he says it was struck by lightning, he's the expert. He would know.
I mean, who am I to argue with him about what he thinks is what happened?
Exactly.
The worst part of it, though, he's like pulling out the old one, and he's like, "Yo, bro, you got like a 4-foot snake out here." And I'm like, "You need to get rid of that, because I don't mess with snake. We're gonna have to burn the whole house down. I'm done with this." I don't mess with snakes. He said that he tossed it over the fence. He didn't kill it. He just tossed it over the fence, and because my backyard backs up to the woods, so he just put it out in the woods. I don't know if he's made his way back, but I'm not going to check either.
Yeah. I saw something like that. I was at my mother's house, and she was watching one of these home fix-up shows, and they were ripping up the ceiling, and all of a sudden there's like a 5-foot snake.
No.
In the ceiling. I'm like, oh.
Cancel. Burn the house down. I gotta go.
Yeah, just set it on fire, start over. Later. And I'm not even afraid of snakes like that, but like, nah.
Needs new house.
Not fucking with that. No way.
Oh, man. So, today we have a guest, and our guest is a friend of mine from a very long time ago. I met this man while we were working in the mall in the early 90s. And he's turned me on to a number of bands over the years. He really actually got me interested in the art of playing bass, even though I don't play bass. His name is Chris Rochella, and thank you for joining us, Chris.
Thank you for having me.
So, when we met, I was working at the Great American Cookie Company. And you were working
at the wall.
Yeah. And they were catty corner, and like you and a couple friends of mine would come over to my shop because it was the closest mid-mall snacking arrangement to your store, you know, because you would come over and get drinks or whatever, and it was just the most convenient spot. But we got to talking, and you obviously were friends with Tim, who is another one of my friends from long ago. You know, it's hard for me to understand how we've held together 20 plus years of friendship at this point.
Right.
Considering we just met in the mall randomly, basically.
Pretty much. But I mean, not for nothing, was it the cheesecake strawberry brownies that you guys had there? They were really good. So that could glue any relationship together. For years.
I mean, most of my relationships are glued together by food, and like in one way or another.
Especially snack foods.
Yeah, snack foods. Especially cake and cookies. I mean, if you're in on that, I'm in. So,
we had that whole discounted CDs for cookies program going.
Yeah, and what I'd like to talk about is the hookup of the wall sticker for free. Like if your CD was scratched or broken, or how do you even break a CD? You got to really try and break a CD. I mean,
you got to try real hard.
You got to try. It's not like tapes.
That
like a tape machine could eat it.
That wall discount program put my life in danger so many times. You would have people, all right, and Tim can attest to this. I think Tim was working with me that time, or Matt Chaparty.
Oh wow, I forgot that guy.
Remember Matt? Because they'd come in and they would think that their guarantee of their CD meant that if they could guarantee that they liked it.
Listen, I could tell you, I worked at Tower Records for years, and I could tell you a million of the same stories, having CDs winged at my head.
Yes.
All kinds of people threatening my life.
I was
because they didn't like this Cinderella CD they got or something.
You were doing Matrix moves before the Matrix was. You took the red or which pill was it? The red or the blue one?
Like a guy would wing a CD at my head, and I would do the.
Yep.
Whoa.
Yeah, exactly.
Been there, done that for sure.
Yeah.
Many times.
Oh man, that takes me back. But yeah, I mean, like, I would go in there and just on every break, I was in your store. It was basically like the rest of the mall didn't even exist. It was like we were on that one end of the mall near the Sears, and I wouldn't go any further than the maybe 2 stores to the right. I would come in, I might look down. If I absolutely needed to go to like McDonald's, I'd go upstairs. But that was it. It was your store, my store, McDonald's maybe, and out the door.
Yeah, I think it was like a sneaker store or something next door, and that was it.
Yeah, and then they put in a Sbarro's across from you guys, and
right.
And I mean that's a authentic New York slice. So I mean, how could you avoid it?
If you're not from New York.
It was more of a Dunder Mifflin, The Office reference.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man, but so kind of wanted to talk about the hell that we endured moving from the mall to work at Best Buy together.
That's right.
So
I think I still owe you an apology for that.
I mean, you know what? It wasn't really that bad in hindsight. It was actually a lot of fun. The funny part is some of the people that worked there when we worked there still work there now. And I'm like, I walk in and I'm like, is this now or is this then? I mean,
time warp.
Yeah, I'm like, you look older, but you're still the same person working the exact same position that you worked legitimately 25 years ago.
You're talking about the dude at the door, right?
Yes. Raphael. So, but I just remember many Monday nights going into Tuesday, because Tuesday was new release day, and we would have the stereo cranked, just listening to whatever was new coming out, but usually on the punk, metal, somewhere on that edge, and everyone just complaining all night that they're like, I can't believe you're gonna let them listen to this, and we're like, fuck you, bud, this is our department.
Exactly.
It's so funny to me because, Len, you told some of those stories before, and even though I worked in a completely different store in a completely different area, we did the exact same shit. Because I told you, Matt Melnick from Darkside used to work with me, and we're sitting there, it's 11 o'clock at night on a Friday, and we're blasting Napalm Death in the store.
I'd fully support that.
That was always the closing music. Is like, so if you were closing at 9 o'clock, at like 5 of 9, you put on like From Enslavement to Obliteration. And, either the first 2 Napalm albums, you will clear the store if you want to get out of there on time.
Yep.
So do you remember having that stack of CDs underneath the desk? And they had like the ones there they wanted us to play, and those always disappeared. Like, I don't know what happened to it. It was usually in the garbage in the men's room.
And then
Because nobody's going to...
We would just play that we wanted to.
Yeah.
What, Hootie and the Blowfish? I don't know what happened to it. It's just
Never heard of him. Never heard of it.
Sheryl Crow, never saw it.
You know what? I don't hate Sheryl Crow, though.
I mean...
I just don't hate it.
Does nothing for me, but, you know... I mean, the other thing, and I know you guys can relate to this, is that working in a record store, you build a tolerance for a lot of junk.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. So what's the worst record that you ever endured, Chris?
Oh, my God.
And I'm not talking willfully endured. I'm talking like it pained you to have to play it, but you played it anyway because like a boss was in the store or something along that line.
I mean, this was right around the time of was the Hootie era.
It was.
That's why I mentioned it, because it's all around that same time frame. I was, we were all working at record stores around that time.
That early to mid 90s.
Yep.
Yeah. I probably have to say maybe it was Hootie.
For me,
it's like oftentimes like it's a lot of nameless, really bad dance music. Like if anybody put that stuff on.
See, I'm able to tune out nameless dance music in the interest of just hearing like the kick and the bass, and I just don't pay attention to the rest. Like it's just like nonsense scratching in the background. But you put on Dave Matthews and I'm ready to flip over tables. I'm done. Like, don't do that to me. That shit is unlistenable. And I don't understand why people love it so much. There's so many people that love Dave Matthews, Fish, The Grateful Dead. Like, there's a whole list of bands where I'm just like, I can't do this, and I don't understand how you can.
The only thing with Dave Matthews that that made it remotely tolerable was his drummer.
Yeah, the drummer's fine. Exactly. He's a good drummer, but
his drummer's a great drummer. But other than that, like, can't. Like, I would just focus on the drums and be like, wow, that's cool.
You just got to wade through the yodeling and the violin and the tinny acoustic guitar. And yeah, but if you can do that, the drums are great.
So while we were both working in the mall, and this is to kind of like backtrack a little bit, I remember distinctly that you guys had a fuck everything, we're playing what we want to play in this store policy.
100%. 100%.
There was like the only time I would know exactly when I would walk into your store when the regional manager was in, because some random nonsense would be on that made absolutely it did not fit the tone or timbre of the store.
You'd walk in, you'd see a bunch of straight faces and Celine Dion playing or something like that.
And you guys are actually in your uniform.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, there was no uniform 99% of the
time. Our small store was probably the most like indie record store of any mall store you would probably get, because as long as there wasn't some corporate management like trolling about, we would just do whatever we wanted there.
Nice.
But I feel like even you guys rigged the system of what got sent to the store. Is that not true?
Well, as far as like what stuff for us to play and whatnot.
Not just play, but like I felt like you had a lot more random shit in there than I would find at most. Like
you're talking about like actual stock.
Yeah, actual
for
stock.
Sale.
Oh, like the stuff for sale. Oh, absolutely. Because we would have. There was like this book that would come. I was like, I don't even remember the name of the company, but you could get like all these really cool import CDs and records and stuff. So, I mean, the stuff that got stocked in the store, it was, you know, stuff that would just show up. But then you had this book that was like the Bible for special orders. And you can get all kinds of like, just a lot of really wacky shit that like you could only find at places like Princeton Record Exchange.
Right.
So I don't know how I never got in trouble for this, because I would spend like just absurd amounts of company money ordering all of these amazing albums and bands and stuff, like really wacky stuff that would never sell, but it was the stuff that I wanted to hear.
And then you'd open it.
Yeah, exactly.
Play it.
No, we're talking pre-internet. Where like nobody, you know, you couldn't like, oh, I heard about this band. Let me go listen to everything they've ever done. You didn't have that. So if you wanted to hear it, you had to like, you know, go out and buy an album, and who had the money for that? So I made a record store do it instead.
That's
so
what
I could hear things.
That's being resourceful.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we used to do with Tower, because Tower used to be able to get all kinds of import stuff like what you're talking about. So like suddenly there's like some crazy special version of like Helmet Betty in a blue case that I still have on my wall, and like stuff like that. All weird import shit, like 20 different White Zombie import singles and shit.
So, do you remember the nightly zombie walk trying to get out of the building past the bus stop?
You know what I started doing is I would park like behind like where our store was.
Oh, upstairs?
I would go out the back way. I would walk through like I would tunnel my way out of the mall.
See, I didn't have that option.
Oh,
because like in the back of the store that I was in, if you tried to go out the back, there was no back door because it backed up to the movie theater, which no longer exists.
See, we were across the way, so
right.
I would lock up out front and then go down this hallway, and it was like this cavernous zigzagging thing that spit me out somewhere near like the dumpsters in Macy's. So
I do remember going out that way once or twice. Like, you guys were working late and I got out and Tim let me through the gate and I just walked out with you guys. But yeah, I mean, most of the time I would have to leave and literally fight my way through the parking lot to get to my car because it was the only option. All the other ways were blocked off with gates, so you could not get out of any other door except for this door. And it's piled up with people that want rides home. They want your money. They want car, like whatever it was. And it was a nightmare every single fucking time. Wow. So then I would always have to like walk the people I worked with out because they were like looking at me like, you're bigger than me. Can you walk me out? And I'm like, look, I'm bigger than you. And if I have to throw hands, I will. But there's a lot more people out there than just me. So you're going to have to help. You're going to have to help me. But yeah, I don't miss that at all. But that was like the early mid 90s. Like things were different then. There were no cameras. Like your life wasn't on permanent display.
Exactly.
Like, it was just whatever happened.
It's kind of a blessing and a curse because I'm really glad that a lot of the stupid shit I did in my younger years was not captured on somebody's phone.
That's one of the subjects we've been actually talking about recently. Is
a lot.
How people haven't come to terms with the fact that their lives are on camera. I mean, it doesn't matter where you go at this point. You could be walking into the grocery store or walking down your street. Yeah. Your neighbor has a camera pointed out to the street, or they might be on their phone and they just start recording you. You've got a phone that you're recording on. Like,
people
there's
have
just
that doorbell thing.
The Ring doorbell. So, like, at all times, you have to imagine that you're being taped. And why are you being an idiot in public for the world to see? Somebody is going to leak this fucking video.
Yep. Yeah, whether you're a cop or whether you're a looter or whatever, like, it's on video somewhere. Somebody's doorbell camera or some shit.
Wait, what'd you say, Chris?
I said, or if you just want to pick your nose in private while you're driving.
Yeah, like somebody caught you. It's like
somebody caught you and put you in the Nose Picker Hall of Fame on YouTube.
You know what? I'm probably in the Nose Picker Hall of Fame. I do it. I'm a grown man. I have a nose and a finger. Sometimes it has to get picked. It is what it is.
If you tripped and fell in the parking lot, you're probably going to end up on YouTube. That's how it is. You know? It's just that's modern life now. That's how it is.
I mean, we've reached that point of ow my balls. Have you seen that movie, Idiocracy, Chris?
You know what? I was listening to your first couple episodes the other day.
And we reference it every episode.
You reference it a lot.
Yes.
And I'm like, holy crap, I've never seen Idiocracy. And I knew what it was about. And I was like, even years ago, somebody was like, I think I actually even rented it at one point when you could actually, rent a DVD. And I was just like, I don't know, man. I'm scared to watch this because I have a feeling this is where we're heading.
Well, that's the thing. Back then, it was comedy. And now it's a horror movie.
Yep.
Because now it's like, oh, fuck, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
And it's just terrifying. And forget about episodes. I mean, Len and I refer to that movie just in daily life on a daily basis. Every day it's like, oh, look, Idiocracy.
I have the movie. I will just let you borrow it. You don't have to go try and rent it from somewhere that doesn't exist anymore. You can't go to the last Blockbuster on Earth and rent it. I'll just give it to you.
I have a feeling if I watch it, I'm going to get confused and think I'm actually just watching the news.
It won't be that. It's like as if the Onion was a TV, like on TV. That's basically what it is. And it's entertaining, but it's also really painful to watch, especially now. Like, it was funny to watch. Terrifying. When I watched it in 2006 or 7, whenever it came out, I was like, all right, this is funny, but it's a little scary. And now I watch it, I'm like, shit, when are they going to hand out the tattoos? Like, because we're almost there. We are almost there.
Oh, it's so terrifying now. Just every day we get closer to it.
So basically, it went from being comedy to prophecy, is what you're saying.
Oh, without a doubt. Absolutely.
For the longest time, that's what I said. I was like, it's the first pre-existing documentary about American life or just world life, that's ever existed. And he's so spot on. I mean, so it's the same guy that did Office Space. Yeah. He just did Idiocracy or whatever. And like, I don't know if he's done any movies, like major movies after that, but I feel like he blew his wad. He's like, I'm done.
He did something, I can't remember what it was, but it was nothing compared to
either
Idiocracy.
One of this movie.
No.
Is it Mike Judge?
Mike Judge.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, I'm watching that movie and like it's sucking me in and it's hurting my heart. It's making me laugh, and now it just makes me cry.
Yeah, and back then it was like, oh, this is so stupid. This could never happen. And now it's like, oh, shit.
He was right.
We're so close.
I mean, our president is basically just as presidential. But you know what? President Camacho, at least listen to the smartest man in the room. You'll understand that reference later.
No spoiler.
So, talking about like life before the internet, music before the internet, as you said, was hard to get. Specifically, you don't know what bands to go see. You don't know what bands to dig into further because you probably haven't even heard of them, or new bands coming up. How did you end up listening to punk and hardcore music? What drew you into that?
All right, so growing up, I was a metalhead. I'd say I was probably about like 14 years old. I was like into Metallica and stuff. So right around the time I just started playing guitar. I started playing guitar because my cousin was a guitar player. My grandfather was a guitar player. And I was like, cool, I'll play guitar. I was horrible at sports. So it was like, I got to do something. I'm not going to be, I'm not going to play football. I weighed like,
You weighed like a quarter, like literally a quarter.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm not going to do that. So I guess I'll learn how to play guitar. And the friends, the group of friends that I ended up getting with in high school, they were into like way more extreme metal. I thought Metallica was extreme. I got introduced to like all like the German thrash bands like Creator, Voivod from Canada, like bands like that, which that kind of like pretty much led directly into punk. There was a couple of people when I was in high school. It was an interesting story. There was one kid, this kid Bob. He made me a tape. It had the first Red Hot Chili Peppers record on one side, and on the back side, he gave me the Dead Kennedys album. What the hell was the name of that album? Give Me Convenience or Give Me Death.
Okay.
And that was just like, all right, this is different. And right around the same time, I actually had an English teacher, and this is probably one of the coolest things that happened to me growing up, because like it should be like an after school special or some shit. I had this English teacher, this really cool guy, really tall dude, real like down to earth, and I was kind of like, I was doing shitty in his class. I wasn't doing really well. And I had to stay after class one day to make up a test. And so I take this test, and he and I we're just talking and whatnot. And he was like, you're not a stupid kid, so there's no reason why you should be, kind of lagging behind and failing. You're a pretty intelligent kid. I'll make you a deal. And because I know you're into music, so if you start bringing your grades up, I will start feeding you music that you never have heard before. And This is, like I said, I was a total metalhead, I wasn't like into old punk or anything like that. And I was like, all right, dude, whatever. We're gonna, I'm 15 or something like that. I'm like,
you ain't showing me anything.
Exactly.
What the fuck do you know, old man?
Exactly. Like I said, it's like straight up after school special shit. So I bring my grades up, and a man of his word, he hands me a tape. It was a 90-minute tape, and on a 90-minute tape, you could fit literally at that time probably about 50 Ramones songs. So
easily.
He hands me, I had never heard the Ramones, and he hands me a tape with the Ramones on it. So right around that time, I'm getting fed the Ramones from my English teacher, and another kid in my school is giving me Dead Kennedys. Me and my friends are into like Creator and Destruction, and like we would literally go into mall record stores, and we would just look for anything that had a terrifying cover and was put out by like Combat or Noise Records.
So what you're saying is you would go into Wall to Wall Sound, which was down on the corner right by this bus stop.
Yes.
See, I remember going to Wall Wall Sound as a kid, and then eventually it turned into the Wall and moved across the hallway to where you were working.
And if I'm not mistaken, Wall to Wall Sound also looked like a giant speaker because it had giant black carpety walls.
Yep, and the entrance was black and white.
Yep.
And like you walked in, and there was like a center island that they served you from, and then all the records were along the walls. Yeah, it was that. You're taking me back here, but yes.
Yeah.
Well, I took myself back if
47, man. I got some years when it comes to the music stuff. So
43. I'll be 44 this year, so we're not that far.
I'm 46, about to be 47, so we're right. We're all in that same ballpark.
Old man alley.
Yeah. So that was my introduction to metal and punk and hardcore.
So the first time I heard Creator's Extreme Aggression, I was like, holy fuck, because it was so much harder than anything else I had ever heard up to that moment. Because
good.
This is before I heard like Obituary or any of the stuff from Florida / like upstate New York, where all the death metal bands were coming from. Like this was just at the cusp of me really understanding what the difference between Metallica and Megadeth and even Slayer was. Like, I'd heard them all, but I really hadn't dug into much of it until probably we were talking about this on a previous episode. The And Justice for All record was like the moment that I would say that it turned me into like a metalhead. But then, you know, I heard all this other stuff via other friends, and I'm just like blown away at the aggression of it all.
Yeah.
And did you ever happen to catch Creator live?
Creator was my very first show.
Oh wow!
Where was that? City
Gardens.
Oh,
Nice.
Yeah, it was. I remember because I was like, because City Gardens would have an ad in the newspaper, and I'm flipping through the newspaper and I saw it was I think it was in 1988. It was Creator, DRI, a band called Holy Terror, and another band called Dirge.
Okay.
And, I'm looking because I didn't know that City Gardens was even a thing, you know. And I'm looking, and I was like, Creator's playing in New Jersey. This is insane. I remember asking my old man, I'm like, where's this place at? I gotta go here.
He's like, no, you don't have to go.
But no, you're not.
No. But you went anyway.
Man. Luckily, my old man was cool as hell when it came to stuff like that. So he dropped me and my friends off at City Gardens for that, and he told me, he's like, listen, he had a very cool scheme when it came to parenting. He's like, you know, if I try and hold back from the kid, he's just going to do whatever he wants and he's going to get in trouble. So my old man was like, I'm taking you. You go in that place, you stay in that place. As it was over, you walk out of that place, you get in the car.
Yep.
Don't walk around.
No walking around in that neighborhood, because that neighborhood, for all intents and purposes, for a man looking like you or a young kid looking like you, was a dangerous location to be at that time. Yep. It still wouldn't be pretty right now, for that matter. And, you know, rest in peace to City Gardens. The damn roof has come in, and the building is unsavable at this point. It's a shame that it went to shambles.
It's literally, I drove by probably about a year ago at this point, and it's literally sinking into the ground. The foundation is just giving out. Yeah.
Well, the last time I drove by was probably like 3 months ago, and you could literally see almost into the building through a crack in the wall. Like the building is just crumbling. I mean, it's an eyesore at this point.
Yeah.
And like, I saw probably 5 or 6 shows there before it closed. And the one show that really, I've talked about it previously, but the Sick of It All Biohazard tour from '92 was my introduction to hardcore. Like, I had heard like punk stuff up to that point, and I saw Biohazard on MTV, and then Tim was like, yo, they're playing here, but he didn't really even go. But, you know, a bunch of other friends from Ewing High went, and I was like, can I go? And they were like, yes. And I went with them, and, you know, mind blown, and I've never really looked back from going to that show. But I would also say that I didn't go to a ton of shows despite City Gardens being not that far from my house. I would argue that where I grew up in Ewing and where you grew up in Trenton, we were exactly the same amount of miles from that location. Yeah. But neither of us, like, for me to get there, it's not a dangerous trip because it's like Ewing Township is nothing at that point.
Right.
But it's a long road to haul when you're riding a bike, and then you got nowhere to lock it up. Yeah. And then for you to cut through Trenton, it's like, do I want to drive down Olden? Well, walk down Olden, or do I want to cut through, like, I guess that's what, North Trenton, North Ward?
Yeah.
Neither one of those are a fun walk.
It's not a savory. Neither one is a savory option. Not one you want to take.
Especially not at night.
Yeah, I went to a lot of shows there. Like if I looking back on all the shows there, I could pretty much pinpoint exactly when I got a driver's license because it was like sparse.
Boom.
Once I had wheels, forget it.
You were there constantly, I bet.
I was just there constantly.
So what would you say is your favorite show that you got to catch while you were there?
Well, the Creator One special, just because it was my first, and it was just like weird because I had this like, you know, kind of like skewed vision of like what going to a show or a concert is. You know, I walk in and it's like this dingy place. And here's a funny story because like, you know, we just kind of like walk up towards the stage and Dirge is playing. And I'm just like, I'm in awe. I've never been at a punk show, hardcore show, metal show, anything.
Had you ever been to an arena show at that point even?
No.
No? So this was
all.
your first show, period?
Yeah. I walked in. I was like,
First live music experience.
Wow, okay.
Other than maybe like a cousin playing guitar in like the living room or whatever.
Exactly. I was like, wow, this arena looks like shit. Nothing like on TV. So I walk in and, you know, we walk up to the stage, Dirge is playing, and there's people are just milling about. They were the first band, and their singer, this guy Jacko, he's just a human bowling ball of a guy. And he's doing his thing, and I'm just kind of like, all right, this is cool. And I'm like looking around because I'm just taking it all in, and I turn around, and what I see is the human bowling ball flying off the stage and taking me and my friends down by our necks. And because he must have known, like right off the bat, and like
he was like, "Oh, they're new. Yep. These are freshies,
fresh blood."
Grabs me, picks me up, pats me on the back, and yells in my ear, goes, "Had to make sure you're paying attention." I'm like, from that point on, every time I went to City Gardens, my head was on a swivel.
Yeah.
Fast forward years later, I'm starting to play shows, and I don't remember like who I was playing with at the time, but we're playing at the Brighton Bar in Long Branch, and you know my friend booked the show. He's like, "That's the guy that booked the show over there. Let's go talk to him." And I'm looking, I'm like, that bowling ball of a human being looks really familiar. It was Jack from Dirge. And I went up and I told him the story, and he was like, I was like, yeah, man, you picked me up and you're like, had to make sure you're paying attention. He's like, I bet from then on you were paying attention.
Definitely paid attention.
But yeah, I mean, that Creator show is really special. That was a long-winded story, sorry. But,
no need to be sorry. That's what we're here for.
So there was that one. The time I saw Voivod, Faith No More, and Soundgarden.
Oh, that's a solid show.
Dude,
that is a solid show.
That was another, going back to that cool English teacher guy. I was going to see Voivod.
Okay.
They were headlining. Voivod was headlining. And because I knew them, I loved them.
I think Soundgarden was opening. That's how crazy that was at that point. Because I remember hearing stories about that whole tour.
Yeah. Well, actually, no. Faith No More went off first.
Oh, Faith No More was first?
Yeah. Because I remember.
That's right. Because that was the real thing. And Soundgarden had already put out Louder Than Love at that point, I think.
Yep. Yeah. So I told the English teacher, I was talking to him. He's like, "Oh, so you going to any shows this weekend?" Because at that point, I'd had a couple shows under my belt. So I was like a real OG at that point. He's like, "Going to any shows this weekend?" I was like, "Yeah, man, I'm going to see Voivod." He's like, "Oh, yeah, they're cool." I was like, "I don't know the other bands at all, so I'm probably, maybe just going to show up late or something." He's like, "Oh, no," and it's this cool dude. He's like, "No, you should go early." He's like, "The first band that's playing is Faith No More. They just put out an album that's getting pretty good reviews, and that was the real thing." He's like, and the band after them is this band Soundgarden. He's like, they're from Seattle. He's like, and there's a bunch of bands from Seattle that are going to be huge. This was like 89.
And you're like, whatever, old man. I'm like, whatever.
All right, dude, whatever.
I'll go check it out. What's it gonna hurt?
Yeah, I went. I was like, wow, all right. He knew his shit.
See, like, we talked about this previously, but The Real Thing was one of the first records that I truly dug in on. Like, I absolutely love that record. and I do love Angel Dust as well. Like, but for me, being 12, 13-ish, that record was like,
yeah, it was a game changer.
It was just like, it's bringing a little bit of the hip hop vibe that I grew up on, but it's giving me a whole new flavor and option for listening palette. I mean, I had listened to Guns N' Roses, I had listened to Metallica at that point, and I enjoyed all of it, but that was like one of the first records I was absolutely obsessed with since maybe like LL Cool J Walking with a Panther. Like, I was obsessed with that record, but you know, there were only a few records as a kid that I was just like completely obliterated by, and The Real Thing was one of them. And it actually pains me that they played within 5 miles of my house. Doesn't matter which house I pick in Ewing, because I've lived in 5 houses in Ewing. Doesn't matter which one I pick. They played 5 miles from there, and I didn't go because I was too young. But I wish I was old enough to have gone.
I wish I had gone to see that tour. I was into them at that point because back then there was no internet like we were talking about before. And Chris, I know you'll relate to this too because it's probably why you ended up working in a record store. But it's just like you're always seeking out new music just buying stuff without even knowing what it sounds like.
Yeah.
So I just heard that they were friends with Metallica, which was my number one band at that point, and I was just like, oh, I'm buying it. And I bought The Real Thing like a good 6 to 9 months before it blew up. And then all of a sudden it blew up, and I was like, oh, now everybody's on board with it.
See, I bought it just as it blew up.
Yeah.
And I was going to camp, and we were about to leave on like a 7-day trip because I was in this thing called travel camp or whatever at the Jewish Community Center. That's in Ewing Township. Well, was in Ewing Township. It's no longer there. But they did like teen travel. So basically all summer you would travel around to different locations. And then 3 times a year you would take an extended trip. Like the first trip was 3 days. The second trip was like 4 or 5 days. And the last trip of the summer was a 10-day excursion somewhere. So
wow.
This was going into the middle of, like, it was right in the middle of the summer. So it was like the 5-day excursion. We were going to like Canada or something like that for a couple days, and I had gotten a couple CDs from the record store, and The Real Thing was one of them. And literally I brought probably 10 CDs with me, and I listened to one, just one. I could have just left the rest at home. So
I was on vacation with my family in Florida, and I bought it on cassette, and that was all I listened to that entire trip. I had a bunch of other tapes with me, but I bought that and listened to it once, and then was just hooked on it.
I don't know. It still had, like, you listen to it now, and while it's old, it still feels fresh to me.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just like my mentality around that record, but there's never been another band that's done that.
Yeah. I mean, I popped it on the other day, and I was like, I hadn't listened to it in a while, and I gotta say, Jim Martin's guitar tone on that was sick.
It's insane.
Yeah. It's like, and it's unique. Nobody's guitar sounded like his guitar. It was like, it wasn't like thick, heavy, but it was just like had this grindingness to it. It's like
it hit
really
different.
Unique, yeah.
That's one of the things that I dislike about current music is that I feel like every time I'm listening to something new, nobody's taking any chances or really digging in and trying to make their own sounds, whether it's guitar sounds or drum sounds, etc. Everybody's just using the same samples and the same settings, the same mics in the same positions. And like, as an engineer, I try not to do that, but you get forced into some boxes occasionally that you just kind of have to follow the formula. But I wish more bands were about the art of making a record and not so concerned with competition. Because I feel like those bands, like, I don't think Faith No More set out to compete with anybody in making that record. They made the record they wanted to make, and it was more of a fuck you moment than anything else.
Yeah. Well, that was Faith No More in general, because I just
do what they want.
Not that long ago, I just finished reading like an unauthorized biography, and they just talked about, you know, what those guys used to do, and just, you know, even from early on, they were just like, yeah, we don't want to make something that sounds like anything else, and they just didn't give a shit if people liked it or didn't.
Right. And I wish more bands were like that, just willing to do what it is that they want to do and not give so much of a shit about everybody else. Yeah. I think creativity would be much greater if that was the case. I mean, even if you look at like hip hop from back in the day, there were thousands of different artists and they all sounded pretty different. And now everybody sounds exactly the same. And I'm just like, I can't even tell the difference, at least for what is available in pop, hip hop, on the radio, etc. It's just plug and play. You could take one guy out and put the other guy in. It's all the same BPM. It's all the same beats with all the same samples. And I'm just like, I can't even tell the difference between this nonsense.
Yeah, I can't listen to any of it because it all just sounds the same to me. And it's not even, you know, it's not even quality.
Yep.
It's just poor quality, just junk thrown together. It just doesn't appeal to me at all.
Old man moment, what I will say is that kids today don't understand how easy they have it when it comes to finding music.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely everywhere, and you don't even have to work for it. It just shows up in your house. It shows up in your hand.
It's easy, but it's boring.
Well,
yeah. Well, but you see, that brings me to a question for Chris, because I know I went through this also when you were working at the records, because to me that era of the 90s, like that early mid 90s, before there was internet, everybody had to search out the music. Like working in a music store, that was awesome at that time. And like, what kind of, because Len and I have talked about this once or twice before, but like, just give me an example, because I could give you plenty of something that you were witness to back then, working in a record store, that nobody will understand now.
Working in a record store.
Because I can give you one right off the top, which was the day that Pearl Jam Versus came out.
Okay.
Bro.
I was working at Tower, and I hadn't become a supervisor yet, so I was still just ringing a register. I was working alone, and that Tuesday morning,
people sleep out for that, right?
I'm running the register by myself, and the line wrapped all the way around the inside of the store. Every person on planet Earth came in to buy that record, to the point of where the store manager had to come downstairs and ring a register next to me because nobody else was coming in until like 11 o'clock.
That's a good one. You're very right about that particular record.
And now it's like nobody cares because Amazon will deliver it and this and that. But back then, so many people wanted it. There was no streaming. There was no YouTube. None of that shit. So that record came out, and every single person that walked into the store bought that record. We went through an insane amount of it just in that one morning. And I've never seen anything like that, and will never see anything like that again.
So I am an actual early stage Pearl Jam fan. I do like that first record, and I do like Versus. Like, I don't care, Versus is the second one, right? And then Versus is the third one. No, Vitology is the third one.
Versus is the one with the sheep.
Okay, so Versus is the one that I bought at a record store. It was across the street from the mall. It no longer exists anymore.
CD World?
Yes, CD World. So the thing with CD World is they used to skirt that system. So records were available to be purchased as of midnight on a Tuesday. So Monday night, they would open at 11:50 and allow you to pack the store, and it'd start ringing. So my ass was actually at that store at 11:50 in the line with 500 other people wrapped around the building to buy that record. They sold out of that record not too long after I got through. They didn't even have any for morning opening.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
That was a big record.
Not that the store, kind of along the same lines, not that the store that I worked at had a Ticketmaster in it, but do you remember people actively sleeping out for tickets for overnight?
Dude, I did every Saturday morning Ticketmaster on sale. Every single one. And we had lines like crazy sometimes. I had to go out there and yell at people lining up all the way up the block. I don't think it ever came out, but I got interviewed for a documentary about Woodstock 94 because we were selling tickets. Like they had special commemorative tickets that they were selling for that, and we sold them at my store. Somebody actually just made a comment on Facebook about working Saturday morning ticket on sales with me, because then you'd have stuff like Garden State Arts Center and Jones Beach would put their entire summer season on in one day, one morning. So suddenly I'm selling like 30 different shows in a single morning, and with a line halfway up the block, stuff like that.
Ticketmaster register.
Oh, all the time. And then the craziest one I could tell you is Barbra Streisand did Madison Square Garden. And at the Ticketmaster window and tower, we only took cash.
Oof.
We didn't process cards until much later on. But these Streisand tickets are like $850.
So people are just standing there with fat wads of cash.
We're in the Village, okay? So and some of the customers we would get would happily tell you that I'm the queeniest queen you'll ever see. And they're coming in like, I can't wait to see Barbara, and they're just dropping $1,600 in cash on the desk in front of me. So I had to we had so much coming in because there was a line out the door. I've got like one of the Tower Records shopping bags with just cash practically falling out of it. Because the register isn't going to hold it. Yeah, the register isn't going to hold it. So what am I going to do? So here I am putting cash into this bag. I'm just counting it over and over and just like, okay, I hope this is good when we get downstairs. Because every single ticket was like $850 to $1,000 cash. And these guys are just showing up with wads of hundreds, and I'm just like, okay, making transactions, doing shit like that. We used to do that all the time.
That's crazy. I mean, so I will say that I never, ever once waited for or even pre-purchased a Ticketmaster ticket because my family didn't have it like that. There was no option for that. It was buy it at the show because you saved to go, or you just did not go. Those were the only two options, short of getting a family hookup. That's pretty much about it.
Right.
So, like, the idea of walking into a Ticketmaster with $800 or $1,000 is just mind-blowing. I mean, certainly I probably could do that now as an adult, but back then, I mean, $800 in early 90s is like way more goddamn money than it is now.
Well, yeah, I mean, most shows were not nearly like that level. Like, that was just some crazy shit. But, like, I had the opposite because I was working at Tower, so I used to get, I knew all the label guys that would come through.
Right.
So I would get free tickets for a lot of shit, or I'd ask my boss and he'd get me tickets for shit. Or, oh, well, I'm working the Ticketmaster machine. Let me see if there's any tickets for tonight because it said it was sold out, but maybe I could catch one. And then sure enough, bang, there you go. I'm going to see the Beastie Boys tonight.
Oh man,
and I used to go.
Another band that I wish I had a chance to see.
Yeah,
I used to go
That's a
to
band that
shows.
evaded me too.
I saw them a couple of times. Actually, I just watched the on Apple Plus that documentary that they
Fuck,
did.
I shot that.
No, the new
Okay.
one, the one that they did live at the theater in Brooklyn.
Mm-hmm.
They had the two of them with like the video screen in the background talking about their whole history. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I haven't watched that yet. Should I watch it?
Oh yeah, it's definitely worth it.
Okay.
It gets sad when they talk about MCA, but overall it's really good. And it's funny because you know how those dudes are, like they're goofing around, but they're talking about from the very beginning, like when they were still a punk band, and then all of a sudden they decided they were going to be rappers and were hanging out with Rick Rubin at his dorm, and then suddenly there they are opening for Madonna with a giant dick. You know.
So my first introduction to punk and hardcore in general was actually Beastie Boys, and it was my friend Dave, when we were at camp, he was like just constantly talking about Cookie Puss, but not the actual Cookie Puss that you could purchase at Carvel, but the record, and then all the other records that the Beastie Boys had put out because his sister put him onto it. So
wow.
like while I'm sitting around listening to Metallica and Megadeth, he's talking about these records from Beastie Boys that I'd never even really heard before. I had heard the hip hop stuff, and I'm like, I don't even like, this doesn't even make sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I went back and I actually listened to them because he handed me the tape and was like, hey, just listen to this. And I was like, all right, that's cool. But in later years, as I went on, I have dug into their old stuff, and you know, I definitely missed out on seeing that.
Yeah, I saw them a few times. Actually, I'll tell you another great record store story that's related to the Beastie Boys. You know, here I am working at Tower Records, and one day my boss calls downstairs to the back office because I'm sitting there eating lunch, and he says to me, I just did something crazy. And I'm like, okay. He's like, because Bad Brains had signed to Maverick Records, Madonna's label, and they were putting out a record, and they were going to open for the Beastie Boys. They were doing a full tour. I had tickets for the Garden. I'm like, holy shit, I'm going to see the Bad Brains at the Garden. So he says, so I did something crazy. I'm like, okay. And he's like, well, I just booked a midnight in-store for the Bad Brains.
Oh.
And I'm thinking like, oh, a signing. I'm like, oh, wow, that's crazy. That'll be cool. And I'm like, yeah, signing, that'll be cool. And he's like, no.
Performance.
And I'm like, oh, shit. And I told him, I said, you realize I'm going to be fired for jumping off the mezzanine that night, right? And I said, every hardcore person working here is going to get fired for jumping off the mezzanine that night. And he's like, we'll try to work something out. But then HR bugged out when they were on tour before the Beastie Boys tour. They were on tour in like Kansas or something. HR bugged out, hit a kid over the head with a mic stand.
Oh,
I actually saw them
took off.
a couple of days before that.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, well, I don't know if it was a couple of days or a couple of weeks, but I saw them on that tour at the Troc and in Philly, and it was one of the most miserable show experiences I ever had because it was supposed to be Bad Brains and like one other band, I don't remember who, and they just like threw on a bunch of like local bands that didn't quite fit. One of which being G Love and Special Sauce.
I think I was at that show.
Dude, it was
I think I was at that show because I remember being like, G Love is fucking terrible.
Exactly.
That's a bizarre matchup.
Yeah, I'm like, is this happening? Like, why? I'd never heard him before that, but I'm like, why is this like, you know, if somebody likes him, whatever, but it's not a good fit.
That was was that a DRE show? The WDRE did that show because it was like they would randomly put punk, like real punk or hardcore bands on shows with like all these other indie-ish like bands that they would play all that music on that radio show, and the radio station that was in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where I picked up a lot of like random stuff that I listened to in my life. But that radio station was notorious for doing stupid shit like that, and I feel like it's one of those shows.
I was going to say, that sounds like a radio station kind of thing.
Yeah. But I remember like when Bad Brains were finally coming on, the band comes out, they start with like, the intro from, God, blanking out. The SST record has Reignition on it.
I guess I.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, they're doing the instrumental intro
Right.
and stuff. People are like getting all hyped up. HR should be coming out to sing after they do the intro. No HR.
Yeah, I remember that.
The band kind of stops. People, the band walks to the side of the stage, a little talking, they come back, they start playing again. No HR. Then you kind of hear HR mumbling, half singing, and not coming out on stage. Then he walks out on stage and then walks off stage. Now at this point, people are starting to get pissed. They're throwing stuff at the stage.
Wow.
And I think I remember HR kind of like swinging a mic stand at somebody in the crowd at that show even. And I remember just being like, you know what, this has been
This
a
is dumb.
I left. I bailed. I left on a Bad Brain show.
I definitely stayed to the end, and it didn't get any better. I promise you, it did not get any better.
The end result was that he ended up getting arrested, and the whole tour was shot. The in-store didn't happen, and it was a whole big mess. But like for that moment in time, it's like, oh my God, the Bad Brains are going to play at Tower Records, and we're all going to get fired. And probably arrested.
So something else I wanted to actually talk about. You used to work at a music instrument store.
Yes.
And you handled many functions over the time that you worked there.
My long, illustrious career.
I mean, I couldn't even pinpoint the amount of years that you were there, but I feel like when you left Best Buy, that's where you went, and you really just kind of left there recently. Was there somewhere between there? If there was, it had to have been short.
Maybe a couple very brief record store stints in other places.
Oh yeah, you worked at the Record Exchange for like a minute, like a day.
Two
days. Yeah.
2 days I was there.
Because I remember I went in on the first day of your employment. I was like, "Hey, Chris, what's up? I heard you were working here. I'm here." And like, I went back maybe 4 days later, and they're like, "Chris doesn't work here anymore." And I was like, "How did that happen?" But honestly, I know how that happened.
Yeah, I don't want to disparage. Disparage the joint because as a customer, I have had very fantastic experiences there, and and my customer interactions there made me a little skeptical of being an employee, but I gave it a shot, and I was like, "Yep, 2 days is enough. Cool, peace."
Yeah, I mean, there was a time where I was in that record store 3 or 4 days a week because they had that much turnover in used CDs, used records, used tapes, whatever I was looking for at the time. They had so much stuff coming in because people were just trading shit in hand over fist, and I was hungry for music, and I was definitely hungry for it at that price point.
I remember going in there a lot of times because I was very much just like you. And as much as I would be excited to see you because I love you as a person, I would be pissed that you were there at the same time as me.
Because I was taking.
You were there before me. You're going to get all the stuff that I want. Yeah, Len's here.
Yep. Screwed again. I gotta beat him next time. But no, I remember just like going in and just being disappointed that you weren't there, but I totally understood why. Because as a customer, I understand exactly what you felt from that angle of working behind that counter with some of the illustrious crew that some of them continue to be there now.
Yeah, they got some lifers there.
That's some true lifers. So it's just like I could see where it would be painful to have been there. But then you ended up over at the music store, which we will not name, but I bought my 5150 from you.
Yeah.
You were my transition into truly playing guitar. So I'd already bought a guitar from Farrington's in Princeton, right by the Record Exchange. And I bought like a trashy like crate amp from someone. I might have even bought it from you. But then I was like, yo, I want to step my game up. And I was like, hook me up. And you sold me at a deep discount a brand new 5150 and cab for $550.
Was that one of the big sales?
No, you were just like, there you go. And I was like, for real? And you were like, yeah, get out of here. And I was like, this is the greatest day of my life. And I still own that head. I have never sold that head. I've fixed it 6 times for random breaking things, and I'm never going to sell it because it's like the most important one that I have. I just used it the other day on some reamping because it still works like a charm.
I'm glad I had that kind of a lasting impact on your musical career.
I mean, you taught me how to drop tune a guitar. Like, I didn't know that you could even do that because I was still stuck on just playing like the open E chords and, you know, just random punk songs. And then you were like, yo, drop that top string, just match it to not the next one down, but the one after that. It was like, if you're in tune, just drop that one and match it, and then just strum it open. And I was like, what? And then you were like, it's a drop D, just try it. And then you were like, helmet, and I was like, oh,
what is this sorcery?
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, that's how they do that, because I could never figure out how they could do that staccato, like deep sounding riff. I could never get my guitar to sound that deep. And then you like, it was so matter of fact to you because, you know, you knew more than me at the time. And I'm like, well, fuck, thank you.
It's a revelation, isn't it? You're just kind of like, oh my God.
I could tune it to something other than E standard? I didn't know you could do that.
It's magic.
E standard is just broken.
Yeah. So earlier you said that you started playing guitar.
Yes.
And I know you primarily as a bass player.
Yeah.
Gary is a bass player.
Who started as a guitar player.
Same here.
I feel like everybody starts as a guitar player, and then you guys, you know, mutate, wander over to the bass.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say everybody, but I think the majority of bass players started as guitar players and became bass players when their friend needed a bass player.
Exactly. Exactly. Everybody wants to be a guitar player. What's that?
I said, but then you fall in love with it, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, for sure. Everybody wants to be a guitar player, so it's like, fuck, we all play guitar. Like, somebody's got to play bass. Okay, I'll play bass. And it all goes from there.
What about the instrument drew you to play it once you decided that you needed to play it, either to fit the group that you had to play with, or, you know, like, what was it that caused your transition?
Well, I mean, for me, I remember I was playing guitar with some friends. We were starting like some kind of a band, and I actually played guitar the first time we got together, and I'd like put together some cool stuff, you know, some cool riffs and everything, and we were playing. And afterwards, my one friend was like, oh, well, Chris, a different Chris. He's like, Chris was going to play guitar, so can you play bass? I'm like, dude, I'm going to have a bass. Like, yeah, sure. I mean, I guess you just play it exactly like a guitar. Man, I don't know what a bass was supposed to do. You know what I mean? So I'm like trying to play chords on it. It sounds all like muddy and shit. And I'm like, just, you know, kind of figuring it out. And the thing with bass for me, the thing that made me actually really love it is because, like, not having any kind of sophisticated knowledge of music, I only took guitar lessons for a year. So I never really knew the role of bass. All I knew is that when I would see bands or listen to bands, you know, the point at which I really liked this song was when it got really deep and really heavy. And I played guitar, and no matter how much I detuned my guitar, it would only sound so heavy. And then I started playing bass, and I'm like, oh, it's me. It's my job. All right. Yeah, that bottom end. Okay, yeah, cool. All right, yeah, I get it now. That's what I'll do. So that's what kind of drew me into it. And, like, kind of having played guitar for a while first, I mean, I wasn't, like, a trained musician or anything like that. So
neither am I.
Never learned scales or anything like that. So what I would do is like, all right, if somebody's playing this chord, I'll make up, I know how the chord goes because I started on guitar. So I'm just going to make up my own parts playing all the notes that are in this chord in some kind of a cool way. So it's like, I just kind of like felt my way around the entire thing. So unlike guitar where I was kind of like shown what to do, bass, I just kind of grabbed and did what I wanted to do. So that's kind of why I gravitated towards that.
I mean, the last band that you played with was a band called Sketch, right?
Yeah.
And for me, when I would see you guys play, I was always taken back by your bass tone, because over the years you cultivated, like, as you mentioned, this insanely deep sounding bass tone, but it still had clarity. Like, I could hear the notes that you were playing, and you figured out how to play along with the drummer in a way that you were percussive but also rhythmic. And I was always just kind of enamored. And anytime you guys would play and I knew about it, because again, this was before the internet was really popping.
Yeah.
I would show up, and you'd see me randomly and be like, Len, and I'm like, yeah, I'm here, because I literally would. I didn't give a crap about the rest of the band. Not that I don't like Molnar and everybody else, but like, I was there specifically to come watch you play bass, because there are a few bass players in my life that I think are really good at conveying a musical message, but you, Gary, and my friend Pat are the three for me that really hit the mark. And maybe my friend who was in For the Love of Will, he was also very, very good at playing along with the drummer and creating a whole like feeling behind the music that wasn't specifically what the guitar player was playing all the time. Because like, everybody I see playing bass these days is literally just mimicking guitar 95% of the time, if not 100.
Well, that was always the criticism of guys that started on guitar,
is that they just
then
play
went
along
to bass, and it's like, oh, they're just playing guitar on bass.
Yeah, no, you got to play more stuff.
But Chris, let me ask you this: when you started playing, when you switched over from guitar to bass, who were the guys? Who did you listen to and get inspired by as a bass player?
As a bass player, it's weird because I have favorite bass players that like I listen to that like I would never try to play like.
Right. Exactly. I have a few
others that like you listen to like just because you're just totally sweating the way their bass sounds, not even necessarily trying to get into their playing. Like for me, like, you know, as a teenager starting to play bass in the 90s, you know, if you weren't sweating Flea, you know, you had to sweat Flea a little bit back in the day. So I would say Flea. My all-time favorite bass player would be Mike Watt from the Minutemen. That's old SST records. As far as tone goes, and even playing-wise, Andrew Weiss from the Rollins Band.
Yes.
Just
thick bass tone.
Awesome.
From End of Silence.
Yes.
A great bass record.
Yes.
I remember seeing them live and was like, whoa.
Yeah, it's a shame that the Rollins Band back then never, in my opinion, on record, End of Silence came close, but they never quite captured that live sound on an album, because that band live was just like, good God.
I saw that lineup once and it was mind blowing.
Yeah.
But it's funny because my path to bass was totally different from yours, because I was into a lot of guitar music, even though as a guitar player, I was a rhythm guy. I was a Hetfield guy. But I was always listening to stuff like Steve Vai and Joe Satriani, and I read Joe Satriani one time talking in an interview about playing bass on his own records. And I'm like, oh, that sounds interesting. And then the local music store had a bass hanging up for like $125 or something. And I'm like, you know what? Let me give it a shot. Why not? And then there were guys that I loved but didn't want to play like, because as much as Iron Maiden is my number one, but Steve Harris was an influence, but not on my playing.
Yeah.
Like, I always loved their music and their songwriting, but I never wanted to play like Steve Harris at all.
The thing with Steve Harris I always loved is the fact that, same with me, I love Steve Harris, never wanted to play like him, but I always liked that, unlike a lot of metal bands that would bury the bass in the mix, you can hear bass on Iron Maiden.
Oh, yeah.
All the way up.
And you know what's funny? The band that I could say, the guy that I could say is my first real influence on bass, did that also, and that was Dee Dee Verney from Overkill.
Nice.
All right. That bass
Overkill, that bass sound in Overkill. I started to play bass, and then I heard that, and I was like, yeah, that's what I want.
How do I get my bass to sound like that?
That's what I wanted, because that shit was, especially on like Taking Over and Horoscope, like all those records, Taking Over, Years of Decay, Horoscope, like you heard that bass, and that bass was massive.
Just like the top end of that bass is just
like
killing straight through the mix, but it's smooth. It's not like pokey. It's like round in the perfect way, in a way that you can only really get on tape.
Yeah, and but it also had that bite to it, like we talk about with guitar sounds sometimes. Yeah. It had that bite to it, and it cut through. Like we're talking about with Steve Harris, is like over the guitars, you could still hear it. It doesn't get buried in that mix.
Same with another one for me, tone-wise like that, Craig Ahead.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I remember when End of Silence, going back to Rollins, when Scratch the Surface came out.
Yep.
And I heard his tone on that album. That to me, that album is
top layer.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Just like, I remember hearing that, like, okay, all right.
With him,
you're like, I see you.
Even going back, though, like, because when I was really starting to get into hardcore, the Live at CB's Agnostic Front, he played on that, and his tone on there is crazy, too.
Yep.
And it just cut through, and you hear that, and it's like, whoa, that's different.
So I get bands into the studio, and as two bass players, I just want to get your opinion on this. A lot of bands come in with these bass players that are timid about playing the bass. And I feel like with the 3 or 4 of you that I know that are really good at playing bass, there is nothing timid about your playing the bass, and that's part of what creates the sound. And I try to like instill that into the people that are coming in. I'm like, you really need to actually play the instrument. Like, you can't overplay it so that you're pulling yourself like sharp or pushing yourself flat, but you need to dig in and actually play this machine, because that's going to be the best way to get the tone that you want. And I'm like, if you're just playing it lightly just to get through the notes, it's just never going to be what you want it to be. Am I wrong?
No, you're 100% right.
Because
I think what happens
sometimes.
I think what happens a lot is that a lot of them feel kind of bullied by the guitar player, because some guitar players want to kind of
shine. They want to shine.
They want to shine, and they want to be what you hear. So a lot of times bass players will kind of give into that, and it doesn't have to be like one or the other. There are plenty of ways. You know from mixing, you can find your own sonic space as a bass player. But part of that is also your playing style, and like what we were talking about with guys that went from guitar to bass, and some of them are just playing bass on, playing guitar on a bass. You've got to learn how to get away from that and not only get your own sound that stands out, in the spectrum, but also your own rhythm, because it's playing along. Like anybody could just pick up a bass and play the same notes, like you were saying before, but part of it is playing along with the drums and getting in that space in between, so it's playing style along with your actual sound.
Yep.
You got to fill in those notes in there and find your own space overall in the music. And I think a lot of guys either are intimidated by the guitar players, or sometimes they're told like, no, I'll play this, and they just end up kind of background when they could stand out also, but they need to play a certain way and fill in those notes and find their own musical space.
I mean, basically, they just try to Newstead themselves.
Well, that's the thing, because Newstead went from one extreme to the other, because if you listen to the old Flotsam and Jetsam stuff,
he was killing it on that song.
He's like fucking Steve Harris in that thing. And then he joins Metallica, Garage Days, you hear him fine, and then all of a sudden Justice, they turned his shit down to 0. They're
like, fuck that guy. He's not even here.
Well, listen, even though, regardless of what you think of the later records, because we've talked about the Black Album and Load and Reload and what loads of shit they are.
All right. The bass tone, all right. We talked about this before. The tones on the Black Album are immense.
Well, that's what I was just going to say.
Regardless of songwriting.
But the tones... Yeah, the tones and the bass sound is great.
Yep.
And yeah, they buried him on Justice, but they let him shine later on. And that's an example of what I'm talking about. Even though, the songwriting is he still does his thing on those records. And you hear him, look at King Nothing, stuff like that. Nope. Or even Black Album, Wherever I May Roam, you hear him cut through like crazy on those records. And that's what I'm talking about.
I was just joking about the fact, just more about the fact that one record, he basically doesn't exist. And most of these kids these days, when you play their record, it's all guitar, and the bass is just sort of there. It's just dull in the background. There's no character to it.
But that's utilitarian, just kind of, filling space, filling some low end.
But that's why, it's funny, but he's a perfect example, because he went from, up, down, he never went back to the way he played with Flotsam. Because with Flotsam, he was playing like I said, he was like on some Steve Harris shit. But
I mean, honestly, none of his projects since Metallica have been even worth the breath to talk about, so we can skip that.
Didn't he play in Voivod for a little bit?
For a minute.
He did. I don't know if he played on their records. I know he did a tour. He did Ozfest with them.
Yeah.
Because of some infamous stories between me, one of my friends, and him, Lorenzo.
No. Lord, don't even bring it up.
Yeah.
Let's just leave it alone.
Sworn Enemy and did Ozfest, and Voivod with Newstead was on that same Ozfest.
Oh, okay.
And we'll leave it at that. But yeah. But I don't know if he ever played on any of their records. He might have played on one record, maybe. I'm not sure. I'd have to look it up. But other than that, the other stuff he did, like the solo thing that he did was like trying to be Motorhead, just didn't work. And now he's doing some kind of country sounding shit, I think.
Pass. Hard pass.
Yeah, I mean, I think the dude just got ruined by the whole Metallica thing.
Got some PTSD going on from the Metallica years.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a shame, but what can you do? But like I said, he's a good example because of that, because he was playing like crazy. He joined Metallica, got buried, and then when they finally turned him up, he was doing his thing, and he had a good tone. He wasn't playing like he was, but the songs weren't that kind of stuff. He couldn't go all Flotsam, on like
Right.
low, you know.
Yeah, he
wouldn't-
played on 2 records for Voivod.
Okay.
I hit up the Wikipedia machine.
Yeah, I was just
And-
starting to look it up also.
He was on Voivod from 2013, and then Cators, I don't know, from 2006. So he played on 2 records. I can't pronounce this thing. Katorz.
It's
however you
Voivod.
That's
They-
Voivod.
Yeah, Voivod was always crazy with stuff like that.
That's Voivod speak right there.
Exactly.
I mean, I can read almost damn near anything, and I can't read that word. So, so while you were working at the music store, Chris, what was the most embarrassing moment you ever had to witness for a rental?
Oh.
Because, like, you know that somebody came in and just wanted to argue with you, and no names, just a situation.
Oh, no, I mean, and it was kind of like, how we were talking before about, when I was working at the wall with their, their sticker thing, and how I would have things hurled at my head and whatnot.
Right.
I mean, I would literally have like angry parents, like, I'd have like an angry dad or something on the phone who would like say, I'm going to come down there and beat your ass, that kind of thing. And I'm just kind of like, I mean, I wouldn't recommend it, but, do whatever you feel is best for you.
Did anybody ever show up?
Well, not to beat my ass, like he said, but he did show up, and it was like, I always referred to it as testosterone.
Testosterone.
Because it's like, it's like you're really tough and talking a lot of shit when you're on the phone, but then you show up and it's a different person entirely. It's testosterone.
I gotta remember that testosterone.
So that's I had plenty of those situations when I was there. But I mean, it's
The only time I've had that situation happen to me, but it wasn't even on the phone, but I was driving around my town, and I may have cut the guy off. I may not have cut the guy off. It's hard to say. I was going fast, and he wasn't going as fast. And then we came up to a light, and I had to stop. And then he gets out of his car, and he comes running up to my car, yelling at me. And I'm like, yo, bro, you need to back off. And as soon as I put the car in park and open the door and actually physically stand up, he's like 5'3" and I'm 6'2", and he's just like, never mind, and runs and gets in his car and literally just speeds through the light. I didn't even have to do anything. I just had to stand up because I was driving, and I had a 90-something Firebird. So when you're in that car, everybody looks short because you're all really low to the ground.
Low to the ground.
He had no concept of, if you look at me, I'm all the way at the back of the window. And I'm at the back of the window because my knees are crunched against the dashboard because there is no space in here because I'm as far back as possible. So I must be pretty fucking tall. So I jump out the car, and he wanted 0 of it. 0. I mean, like, literally blasted through a red light.
Oh,
So yeah, I understand what you mean by this testosterone. Like, everybody's got a lot to say until it's time to actually do something about it, and then they're like, maybe not. I was just feeling some kind of way, but I changed my mind.
let's rethink this now. Let's talk like civilized human beings now that we're in this face-to-face situation.
You got the wrong crowd.
So let me ask you this. When I first met you, you were about 25 pounds.
Yes.
Maybe 30. And over the course of the last 15 or so years, you have beefed up.
Yeah,
and you've been going to the gym and working out. And I just want to know what changed your mindset to decide that you wanted to build yourself up, because I have to imagine that people look at you differently now than before.
Yeah. I mean, not so much now. But like when I first, went from like being like, 45 pounds with 2 potatoes in my pockets, like, to all of a sudden, they don't see me for about like, 7-8 months. And, I started putting on a little bit of size. It was like, kind of like, whoa, what are you doing? But for me, like what made me want to do it, like get in shape.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of twofold. There's the physical aspect of it, and there's the mental aspect of it, and just the way things had fallen into place. Like, I was always like, like you said, really scrawny. I was not a healthy person. I didn't eat healthy. At the time, I was a smoker.
I do remember that.
And the physical thing that kind of like clicked in my head was, and I never exercised at all. I was at said music store, doing my thing, and somebody had come in to pick up an amplifier repair. And I happened to be walking past the front counter, like, oh yeah, I got a call and my amp is done. And you remember the layout of the place, where the warehouse was to the sales floor. I was like, well, I'm heading back there, man. I'll grab your amp for you. And, we're talking about like, I would honestly say I probably weighed like, I don't know, maybe $150 at that point. Skin and bones, not a muscle to be found anywhere. Shit diet, just not taking care of myself. Not punishing myself. I was never a heavy drinker, never got into drugs. But I just like treated my body like, like crap. So I go to the back, I grab this guy's amplifier. I struggle with this amplifier all the way through the store and up to the front. And by the time I got to the front, I don't even know if I ever told my wife this story. I got to the front and I put the guy's amp down, and I had a pain in my chest that felt like somebody stabbed me. Like right in the sternum. And I was kind of like, what? Like right then and there at that moment, I went, what the fuck am I doing? I'm like, at the time I was like, I don't know, maybe like 30, I don't know, 31, 32. And I was like, I'm entirely too young to feel like death walking about 15 feet carrying something that's got some weight to it. And that was the physical indicator of like, I got to change my shit. The mental aspect was, this was right around the time that like Sketch had kind of like stopped playing.
So we're talking 06, 07 -ish?
Yeah, I guess around that time. I'm really bad with dates.
I'm pretty good with them.
But yeah, it was probably, I guess around that time. So that was my outlet for, mental stress, playing music, with my band, playing shows. Even though we weren't necessarily a hardcore band, I always played very physically. Yep. Which it didn't take much for me to be exhausted at the end of a show, being in the physical shape I was in, but it was an outlet, a physical and mental outlet, and I didn't have it anymore. So I felt, I wanted to get healthier. At the time, I was living in this really crappy apartment in Bordentown. It's called Hillcrest Apartments, Hillcrest Apartments, but I called it Hellcrust.
So those are the ones that are on the right, just off of 206, right?
Yeah, where Timeless Tattoo is. Yep. It's those crappy apartments that are hidden behind that strip mall. Okay. So I was living there at the time, and right down the road was a gym that was 24 hours, and I was like, I'm just gonna go and join this gym. I'm gonna, quit smoking, and anytime I want to smoke, I'm going to go to the gym. And it went from, I walked in, and that place was just notorious for like juice heads and stuff like that.
You're talking about Powerhouse.
Yes.
Yeah, I went to Powerhouse myself for about a year, and I never felt comfortable because of the juice heads.
Yeah.
But it's just not a nice, like, it doesn't feel good in there.
Yeah, but I went in there with the attitude, I was like, you know what? My money is just as green as theirs. I'm paying just as much as they are for their membership, so I have just as much right to be here as you do. So I went in and I started I would look at what people did that seemed like they were, put together and they knew what they were doing. And I would just try and do it at a much smaller scale. So.
And then you just built brick after brick after brick. And all of a sudden it probably was like, one day you were like, holy shit, I can lift way more than I thought I could.
Yeah. It went from like picking up a 30-pound dumbbell was like, the
end of the world.
Or like my cardio consisted, I remember on the machines there would be there would be a warm-up setting that was literally 7 minutes. At the end of that 7 minutes, I was sucking wind. I was like, well, this isn't good.
Right.
So, and then I started seeing some changes and stuff. And then my brain went into like, I got to get big. I want to get big, and like I had no knowledge of nutrition. So I was just eating like all the worst possible shit. Thinking like, I got to get big. I just got to eat a lot. You got to eat big to get big. And I'm eating and lifting and eating and lifting. And I was getting bigger, but I was getting fatter at the time too.
Right.
So then I had to like work past that. So
one of the days that I pulled up to that specific gym, I had stopped at Wendy's on the way to the gym. And I'm sitting in the parking lot eating Wendy's before I go in to the thing. And one of the juice heads walks up to the side of my car, taps on the window, and he goes, "You probably shouldn't eat that, but a number of us have gotten big off of doing that. So do your thing." And I was just like, maybe I should change my approach. Like, maybe this isn't the right plan. I did finish my chicken sandwich, but I never once showed back up to the gym eating a chicken sandwich and fries again. I curbed that. So do you remember the time like that I actually got in shape? Did we see each other around that?
You were going to Peak, right?
Yeah, I was going to Peak.
Yeah, and so that's where John goes. And I remember I met up with John there, and he was like, "Yeah, Len's been coming here." And I was like, "Really?" And I worked out with John a couple of times, and I saw you there.
So for me, it was about the same age. I was turning 30, and I went on a trip to Cedar Point, which is out in Ohio. Yeah. And I drove out there all fat and happy. Like I was the fattest I had ever been in my life. I was probably 300, maybe 310. I don't know. I was big. And it was just me and my girlfriend at the time. And we drove out there, and it's just the two of us. I drive the whole way, and I'm super stoked about being there. So we get up in the morning, and we head over to the park. You pay, you get in, and you're going around, and I jumped on a couple rides right away, and then I got to the ride that I specifically drove out there, which is the Millennium Force. It's one of the largest roller coasters in the world.
Yes, I know it well.
So my big ass waits 2.5 hours to get on the line to get on this ride. There's a seat outside the fucking ride that I could have just tried this and saved myself.
Could test it out.
I could have spared myself this embarrassment and pain, but it would have made me mad that I drove all the way out there. But I spend 2 hours, and I get there, and we sit down in the seat, and I try to fasten the buckle, and no matter how much I sucked it in, I was still 6 inches from closing this thing. They don't offer a seatbelt extender, nothing. So then I had to stand my fat ass up and walk off this ride in front of everybody else, laughing at me for being fat. So immediately the next day when we got home, I was pissed off the rest of the day because I spent 10 hours driving to this location, and I got to drive 10 hours home. So I had a good 10 hours to think about what the fuck was wrong with my life. And I ended up, that was my turning point moment that I probably need a new one right now, but that was my turning point at that point. I was 30 years old, so big that I couldn't ride the roller coaster that I spent so much time and money and effort and took time off of work to do. And I'm like, fuck this, I need to get back out there by next year, and I need to be able to get on this fucking ride. And I lost 70 pounds in about 10 weeks.
Wow.
I mean, I put in work. Like, I got myself from running a mile in about 15 minutes down to under 8 in 10 weeks. I mean, I was pushing. And by the time I got down to about 200 pounds, I was benching 300 plus for reps, not just for like a singular, like, oh, let me see how much. No, I would just go put 300 on the fucking bar and lift it. I was curling like 85-pound dumbbells because I was that focused. I'm not that focused anymore. Let's be very clear. If you put even like a 40-pound dumbbell in my hand, I'm going to struggle right now. But I know I have it in me, and I need to turn that back on.
You know what I would tell people too, man? I always tell people that the numbers that are on there are for reference. If your body is working, your body's working. Don't pay attention because, like, you work out sometimes with some people and they're like, oh, I'm not benching enough, or I'm not, I can't lift enough, blah, blah, blah. It's like that number is there for reference so you know when you're getting stronger. That's all that's there for. If your body's working, that's all it knows.
Yeah, it's not always a competition. By the way, Len.
Yeah.
Did you ever go back to that roller coaster?
Oh, yeah. 2 or 3 times. Okay. Nice. And it is a wonderful roller coaster.
Needed a happy ending on that one.
Oh, no. The happy ending is that I did end up going back out there twice since and riding all the rides that were possible. And it was all made possible by the agony of defeat. So it was much like your defeatist moment, carrying that fucking amp even 20 feet and feeling like you were going to die. I had to drive X amount of time and spend time angry driving home, with a sleeping girlfriend. So all I had was my thoughts and music. And literally the next day I joined the gym and I didn't look back. I mean, for 2.5 straight years, all I did was work out and lift. I was barely even playing guitar at the time. Like, I wasn't doing really music at all. All I was focused on was getting in shape.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing too. I mean, like, any kind of self-improvement situation, very rarely, I mean, I can't think of any self-improvement story that comes from something being really great. I don't think anybody wakes up one day and is like, wow, I look great.
I'm going to look even better.
Greater now. It's like, you look like shit, you feel like shit, and you're just not happy, or you got a bunch of negative stuff going on, and to make things better. That's the one saving grace of negative situations, is it always makes for a cool comeback story.
Right. So in the midst of you working out and getting better and going to more shows, you broke your ankle or your foot at a show?
Yeah, 2 years ago. It'll be 2 years in August.
Was it a Sick of It All show?
No.
Or no, H2O show?
It was a Descendants show.
A Descendants show, okay.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a kick in the nuts too. I love the Descendants. Absolutely love the Descendants. Carl Alvarez, another one of my favorite bass players.
Great bass player.
Yeah. And I've seen some crazy shows. I've seen some, like, I saw Agnostic Front and Sick of It All together at City Gardens. Like I said, first show was Creator. I've seen Napalm Death. I saw, so many, like, really aggressive bands over the years. And I never got injured. I knock on wood. Happily, all those years, 30 years of going to crazy-ass shows, never got injured. And I finally get injured during Silly Girl. Like, no, not World Full of Hate, nothing like that. No, Silly Girl. Basically what happened was I was hanging out. I was kind of like on the outside of the pit, where a 40-plus-year-old man does not belong, in my opinion. And someone, they were doing California band, so the kids were doing the California circle pit thing. Always hated circle pits. Can I just say that?
Yeah, I'm not a circle pit guy at all.
Always. Wrong coast. And someone was coming around, and they stomped right on my left foot. I didn't see it happen because I was watching the band, and it just felt like my foot literally exploded.
Ugh.
And I was like, it kind of almost felt like, you ever roll your ankle really bad where it's like insane pain and then numbness?
Yep.
So it kind of felt like that, and I was like instantly like, what the hell just happened? And I went to take a step, and I felt my entire foot like feel like a pancake. Just flattened. I was like, well, this is very bad. And this was at the Fillmore in Philly, which is a pretty big freaking place.
Yeah, that's a very large venue.
Yeah, so I hobbled my way to their little lobby area there, and started texting my friends that I was with. I'm like, Mayday, old man down. So, long story short, many misdiagnoses happened, and what happened was what I had was called a Lisfranc injury, and it's named for the French doctor that figured out how to fix this thing. Because basically what happened is I essentially had 2 fractures and a torn ligament. It essentially broke my foot in half.
Oh, God.
Yeah. So, but I got lucky in the sense that the bones weren't displaced, so I didn't have to get surgery. It's kind of broke and snapped back where they should be.
Oh, wow.
Which is like incredibly lucky.
Yeah.
Incredibly lucky. So, yeah, that, mind you, that happened 1 month after my mother had passed away. So that show was meant to be like a celebration of life getting back to normal, seeing one of my favorite bands. And it was like, that was like a seriously depressing kick in the teeth, because it was like, life had been absolutely insane. And it was like, okay, things are starting to level, things are starting to chill. Oh, boom, you're not going to walk for 6 months.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
So how did that affect your mentality around you working out in fitness? Like, it had to change at least what you were able to do. I mean, could you even go?
Not for a long time. By a long time, I mean about like 4 months. So like when as soon as I knew I broke my foot, because there was no mistaking that pain, I screamed as loud as I could because it hurt so damn bad. And the first thoughts in my head were, how am I going to lift? My wife's going to kill me. Those were the 2 things. I was like more afraid of her than anything else. Because every time I go to a show, and
you're going to get hurt.
Yep. So like, whatever you do, stay in the back. Don't go up front. Stay in the back.
And now it's, you see what I mean?
You don't fucking listen to me.
I told you.
She's like, just stay in the back. And I didn't stay in the back. And as soon as it happened, I was like, oh, I'm so dead. Making that call was just like, oh boy. But yeah,
I kind of maybe broke my foot.
That's exactly. I was like, something happened. I don't know what yet, but we're gonna go to the hospital now. Yeah, it laid me up for a good amount of time, and then there was like they messed up and they put the cast on too tight. And in doing that, I popped a blood clot.
Oh no!
Yeah, so
that could have been terrible.
Yeah, it could have sucked. And while I was in the hospital, they misdiagnosed me and said I was in the hospital getting my foot checked out for the blood clot. They're like, yeah, you got a clot, so we got to admit you. I'm like, all right, don't want to die, so that's cool. And they were like, well, we can't give you any food because the doctor wants to give you a procedure in the morning. I'm like, I haven't been seen by a doctor yet.
You're like, whoa.
Yeah. If I wanted to, I could have made it a real malpractice situation, because they literally held me captive and starved me for a day for a mysterious procedure. They were reading somebody else's chart.
So, and who knows what that procedure would have been.
I know.
Oh, man.
Dude, you could have got an extra arm.
I know.
They could have given you a 3rd arm.
It's like, I had a blood clot and now I have 3 feet. What's going on here?
You could have been the $6 million man.
I know. I should have just went with it.
You should have wrote it out, bro.
Whole bunch of bionic shit.
But yeah, I mean, that messed me up for a while. But as soon as they were like, all right, we're going to throw a boot on you. And, I was like, every time I went to the doctors for a checkup, I was like, when can I work out? When can I work out? And as soon as they gave me the green light, I was that dude on crutches crutching around the gym.
Crutch,
Yeah.
crutch, lift, crutch, crutch.
I was like, oh man, it was ridiculous. Because at first I was like, it's a foot. You don't realize how much stuff you use.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
just to do like bench, you have to stabilize with your foot. I mean, when I see people that have missing limbs and they've figured out a way to work out effectively and efficiently, I'm like, hats off, bro. I don't know if I could figure it out. I mean, I guess I would, but like, it's impressive.
Have you ever seen?
Totally.
There's a guy. Look him up on Instagram. His name is Paul de Gelder.
Okay.
Paul de Gelder, he was like kind of like the Australian version of a Navy SEAL, and got attacked by I think a bull shark, and it took his right arm and his right leg.
Oh my God.
He still works out. He is just an absolute beast. He has like special prosthetics to do like bench press and stuff.
Okay.
Wow.
He's an absolute beast. Like, really inspiring guy. You should check him out.
I look up to people who are able to persevere through situations like that, because it's like, I think about it from the aspect of like, I got a hangnail and I'm like, oh man, I gotta lay down for the afternoon. I can't even handle this right now. And then there are people out there who legitimately have reason to just chill and they don't. Yeah. So like, it's super inspiring.
I think it's like one of those things, man. It's like, it depends on what you're passionate about. You know what I mean? Like, if you hurt your hand, something happened to your hand, I know you'd still want to play. So you'd IOME your way through that. You chop off your two fingertips, you'd be playing.
I'm going to tell you right now that since Descent broke up in January, I have physically, truly played guitar 4 times.
Really?
Wow.
4 times. Once was for a recording that's coming out subsequently in a couple weeks, with some members of Descent in a new project. And then I played two live sets, one in February and one in, I guess that was May, with a band I filled in for them for 2 sets. And then I played on my own, trying to play that Faith No More song that me and Gary are working on a slight cover of. And otherwise I look at them and I'm like, I'd rather just buy new amps than actually even play the guitar. I don't even care. Like, if I actually kind of feel like if I never play again, I probably won't miss it, because I've done pretty much everything that I ever set out to do. So anything else short of going to Europe or like Japan to play, it would just be like, just do it again.
Yeah, I felt that way about bass for a while.
I think everybody has moments like that, because I've had moments like that at different points, and then eventually I go back to it. I mean, there was a stretch a couple of years ago, when Billy Club wasn't doing anything, that I stopped playing completely for the better part of a year, at least. And I just completely stopped, and then at some point I just got the bug again. I picked it up, started going again, and it's like riding a bike.
My calluses are coming off. That's how little I play. Like, wow. Literally, they're peeling off today. Like, just, I'm not working them at all, to the point where it's just, sloughing off my hand.
Right.
I started playing a lot during quarantine.
Do you have a project on burgeoning, or are you just playing just to play?
No, just playing by myself. like I did when I was a kid, just sitting playing along with
different records here and there.
Old punk and hardcore records and stuff like that.
I mean, I know we've talked about doing something, but that requires like motivation on my end, and I'm probably the problem here, because like
I don't know about that.
No, well, I mean, I do have your bass cabs that are waiting for you.
Yeah.
So, Gary, Chris had to move his bass cabs out of his parents' old house, and I have them at my studio.
Right.
And they've been there for about, almost 2 years now.
Yeah.
About 2 years now. And, some people have used them along the way, mostly Pat from Swashbuckle, when he wants to just play like a 2x10. He just wants to like not worry about anything. But overall, they're just getting babied and watched over, just so that Chris can make his return at some point when he's ready.
Yeah, because I never had, when I was living in like apartments and stuff like that, I didn't have space for my bass rig, so I would leave it at my parents' house.
Mm-hmm.
And then I stopped playing, and then if I did play, I didn't need like that big ass rig, so it just kind of like lived in my parents' spare room. And then after my mom passed away, I was like, I gotta get rid of this thing. I never use it.
So he calls me and he's like, oh no, you posted it on Facebook. You're like, does anybody want this? And I was thinking in my head, I was like, all right, I have space because I just built this new studio, and Chris is going to want this shit back one day. One day he's going to want this shit back. I was like, yo, Chris, just give it to me and I'll just hold on to it. I'll just store it for you. It's no big deal. You can have it when you're ready, and I'll just use it and I'll take care of it. And if anything's wrong, I'll fix it and we'll be good. And when you're ready, bud, it's ready for you. Like, it's all rewired. Everything is working, because when you gave it to me, you said that you didn't think something was working. It all works. So it's a 2x10 and a 1x15 or a 1x18. It's huge.
It's an 18.
Yeah, it's got that fucking thunder on it.
What brand?
The 18 is an Ampeg.
Nice.
It's the Ampeg enclosure, but I blew out the speaker, so it actually has a PV Black Widow in it.
Oh wow.
Oh, that's a solid speaker.
Yeah.
And then the top is a Mesa 2x10.
Oh, nice.
So it's got the best of both worlds, and like it's clear, but it's deep. It's really a fantastic rig.
Yeah, I used to run the GK 800 for a head.
Good amp.
It's a built-in bi-amp, so you can just like really, push all that low end through that 18.
Yep.
Yeah, I always like those amps. Those were my second favorite, because I always use those in practice spots and stuff like that. For a long time, I had an Ampeg SVT3 Pro, and I used that, and that thing was heavy as shit.
Yeah, I would have loved to have had one of those back in the day, but I would never been able to pick it up.
Well, that was the problem, and eventually when Billy Club stopped doing stuff, I sold it, but I sold it to Len, our friend Joe, under the condition that if I ever needed it, I could always borrow it. Right. And then eventually I bought a new rig. I bought a dark glass because the head weighs like 9 pounds. Yep. It's like total opposite of the Ampeg. It's like now I could throw this thing in a backpack and not break my back with it. So it's a whole different world now. So
lately, I've been reamping bass, or even having people just play straight through it, with a V4 from 1972. And when you carry this thing, you should probably put on one of those weight belts.
Oh yeah, it
is so fucking heavy.
Oh yeah. I'm
like, I struggle to get it off the shelf sometime, and I'm just like, how is this possibly this heavy? And I mean, it's a regular head enclosure, but it's like it's packed with bricks. Like, it's just all bricks inside. There's no actual material in there.
I love those Ampegs, but they're killer.
Yeah,
they are a killer.
Bass amps back then weren't worth anything unless when you picked it up, it felt like all of your internal organs were going to explode.
They're just gonna it's all flowing out. It's just gonna all fall out.
We're just gonna like explode and turn to jelly.
That's one thing I don't miss. As much as I love that Ampeg, and Joe, I think he still has that Ampeg, but he he ended up getting a dark glass also. He ended up getting the newer dark glass. I was annoyed because I bought the dark glass last year, and then they came out with a version 2.
Right.
That has the EQ on it now.
EQ on it, yeah.
And I'm like, fuck. I might sell mine
and buy the new one.
And spend a couple of bucks to upgrade it.
So
get the new one. We'll see.
Chris, the last amp you sold me was a Bogner Uberschall, and it was like right before you moved to working in the back office. I am going to tell you that this is the bane of my existence because it is my favorite by far sounding amp, but I've had to fix it 9 times. And
wow.
Like, it's in the shop right now. I plugged it in with the band I was working with just like 2 weekends ago, and we're riffing and we're about to start recording. I hit record. I'm like, where's the noise? Like, what is going on? Stopped. It just stopped working. And like, I've got a $700 power supply that regulates voltage to exactly 120 watts. So I know I'm not blowing it up with that. I've got hand-built speaker cables and a perfect diamond cab that I know is in perfect condition. Nothing else was having a problem that day. This amp probably just threw another set of power tubes. Like, literally, there is something wrong with this thing. So I'm gonna sell it and buy a new one.
Well, I mean, you still got to love me for that 5150, though. Right?
I do. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. I'm just saying that while the 5150 worked out in my favor, this Bogner has really kicked me in the dick. I mean, I think I've spent as much money fixing it as I did on buying it at this point.
Wow.
And I'm like, I could have just bought a second one that would work and just leave this one on the shelf and say, that's just for show at this point.
At this point, it's like a spite thing.
Yeah.
You're just not going to replace it. You're just going to keep fixing it.
So, yeah, I think when I get it back this time, I'm going to actually put it up for sale and sell it. And then whatever proceeds I get from that sale, buy a new one. And just because I do love the amp, because it is exactly the sound that I'm looking for. But I also don't want to fight with it being broken all the time.
It's the sound you're looking for when it works.
When it works, yes. Not when it's going...
The sound you want when it makes sound.
So, you left the music store in a transition I didn't see coming. So, your wife started running a studio, and you decided to join her. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So, right around the time that I started kind of like getting into fitness, I jumped into that. She and I were dating. And I just started dating. So she always had a thing for yoga. So she had pretty much around the time that I started lifting, she started practicing yoga. And, over time she was like, I want to become a yoga teacher. I'm like, all right, cool. So she go get certified. She went and got certified. Then she's like, I want to teach full time. I'm like, nobody teaches full time. And she's like, I'm going to do it. I'm like, all right, well, I mean, to know my wife, she is a tiny powerhouse of a human being. And when she has her mind set on something, I mean, she's going to do it.
Right.
So I was like, all right. So she was literally like just driving, studio to studio, gym to gym, teaching yoga. At one point, she was teaching at least 20 classes a week.
Wow. That's a lot of classes.
That is.
So she was teaching like 20 classes a week all over the place. She had helped a couple other studios get up and running as far as helping them build a schedule, getting the stuff that they need to run and everything like that. So she pretty much already knew how to operate a yoga studio. So then she got it in her head. She's like, I want to have my own studio. And I was like, oh, God. There we go.
I can see the money rolling out the door right now.
It's like she and I, we have a very good balance, she and I, because I'm always the very cautious one. I'm just kind of like, I always weigh out like all the potential negative situations, and I'm the dip my toe in. She's already like 30 feet down, and I'm just kind of like, is it cold?
So you do the risk assessment for the house.
Exactly, and it's one of those things. It's a push and pull, because like sometimes I need that push to do things, and sometimes she needs that pull back. So we came to this building because right below us is the Moth Coffee House, which is a vegan coffee house. She and I had been vegan for, I guess, about a year at that point, and we're just like finding different places to eat and going and checking them out. And we were here, and she was like, wow, this building's amazing. How cool would it be to have a yoga studio in here? And she overhears somebody saying something about a space being open upstairs. So she calls up and talks to the owner, and this is another one of those like weird, bullshit, like fate moments. She's like, yeah, I'm calling to inquire about the space upstairs. And the owner of the building says, please tell me you want to do yoga. And he's like, yeah, what? And he's like, I've been wanting a yoga studio in this place because I think it would work together with all the, the vegan coffee shop downstairs, the other businesses around and stuff. He was like, I think it would work really well. So we had a small space on the third floor in here, which was, it was doing really well in our first year. And then we moved down a floor. We went from a small space on the third floor to where we are now, which is the entire second floor. We got a big yoga room, other practice areas. We have an infrared sauna in here. So it expanded to the point that, we wanted to, keep it moving and everything like that, but it required more than just me helping out here and there while still working at the music store. And it happened to coincide with our growth here, happened to coincide with me getting completely burnt out on that job after doing it for as many years as I did. So I kind of like, for as long as I was there, I kind of blew everybody's mind when I was like, yeah, I'm out.
I'm done.
Yeah. They're like, who are you going to work for? I'm like, nobody.
Me? Me.
Yeah. Just me and her.
So I remember I came to visit you. It was right towards the end, and you were like, yeah, I'm my days are short here, is basically what you said to me. And I was like, what do you mean? And you were like, I'm joining my wife's studio. I've gone and got certified, or I'm working on getting certified for nutrition.
Yep.
And, I'm going to move over and start working alongside her to help push this business forward. And I just looked at you like, bro, are you kidding me right now? I was like, all right, like for real? Because like I
didn't get the nutrition certification. I was going for yoga teacher training.
Okay.
Which kind of got derailed for me a little bit with COVID and having to concentrate more on the business end of things here. But so that's still an ongoing process.
Life is an ongoing process.
Isn't it though?
It just keeps going, and if you don't stop and look around, you might miss it.
Yeah.
So you moved in and started working in the studio. COVID hits. How has that changed what you're able to actually get done? And did it cause stress in keeping the business open due to the loss of having people in? Did you guys switch to doing online work, or how did you keep the money rolling?
Yeah, well, it was one of those things. I left my other job. I left my full-time job in November, and that's coincided with us moving to the bigger space. We opened at the same time, pretty much as me leaving. So that kind of like everything was going really fluidly. And part of the reason that we left is because we needed a bigger space, because we were packing out classes in the small space where everything was getting waitlisted. So having the bigger space, having the sauna here and everything like that, everything was just firing off like perfect. Business was going great. Everybody was happy. And then, like you said, a couple months later, COVID hits, and we had kind of seen the writing on the wall before everything got shut down.
Right.
Like it's coming. It's like you just felt it coming. So we got set up for doing streaming classes like really quickly, which pretty much saved us.
So are you still doing them now?
Oh yeah, and it's at a point now where what we're doing is we're doing streaming classes. We have about like 7 or 8 teachers.
Okay.
That work here, most of which are still streaming from home. Some are coming in studio to stream because it's more convenient and everything. We have now that the quarantine is kind of like loosening up. Most people are coming and streaming from here, just because the studio looks better than it looks better. We got mics here and stuff like that. It'll sound better and everything. So, but we're in the process now. We still have streaming classes. We are starting just this past weekend. We started having actual in-studio classes again, limited capacity.
Yeah, because you got to keep the 6 feet at least, and
exactly.
You got to sanitize everything and whatnot.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm like, between sessions in the sauna over there, I'm in there like
spraying and scrubbing.
Yeah, it's like, oh man, it must be so cool to own your own business. It's great, but I'm also the guy. I'm wearing the rubber gloves and the face mask, and I'm sitting there scrubbing,
people's sweat.
Yeah,
exactly.
But, that's what you do when you have your own thing. You do all this stuff. But yeah, I mean, we got limited capacity, and people are starting to come back for classes, which is great. But we're still going to continue to do the streaming, like. Even, after, if and when all this COVID stuff passes, we're going to continue to do the streaming thing just because,
it makes sense.
It totally makes sense.
Yeah.
You can do the stream and people can join. You're unlimited in the amount of people that could actually watch a stream. So if the teacher is teaching, it doesn't matter whether there's 2 people watching or there's 300 people watching. Like, you can maximize your money and availability. So even if you don't have the space to have somebody in, but they want to join that teacher's session, they could join it from home. Like, you really did get out ahead of this. That's commendable. I see so many businesses these days that just didn't jump. And like, I drove around recently, and I was amazed by how many businesses have gone out in this time frame. And I've talked about this previously, but the test is going to be in 6 months who's still here, because anybody that's been skating by without an actual plan and they've just been paying their bills by the seat of their pants. When these things open up, people aren't going to be coming out in droves like they expect. People aren't going to have the money to spend because they're behind on their bills. And, over the course of these next 6 months, if everything stays open and gets better, we're still going to see a lot of businesses just drop.
Well,
they're not going to be able to keep up.
And Len, you and I have talked about it. Like, Chris is smart that you stayed ahead of it, because a lot of these places were limited or closed completely. But then once things start to reopen, they owe 3 months rent.
Yeah.
And once they see their numbers and they see, Len, you said 6 months. Like I've been saying, by the end of the summer, you're going to see a lot of people drop, because they're going to realize that the mathematics just don't work.
Yep.
And
I was just giving it that 6-month buffer for people to have some savings left over, and they're going to slowly dig through that, and then in 6 months they're going to be like, you know what, it's almost 2021, and I can't do it anymore. The people aren't back, the money isn't there, and I've lost too much over the course of the year, and they got to shut down.
Yeah. But, it's good that you stayed ahead of it, because that's a smart thing to do, because at this point, I mean, small business is in so much trouble now, from COVID, and there's no help from the federal government.
It's like with us, we moved all the classes to streaming, but there were some ways that we did take a hit. Like, like I said, we had people who just pay to come use the sauna. You can't stream a sauna, It's like,
when you figure that out.
Yeah, when you figure that out, there's going to be a lot of business.
So we have that, and literally in February, just about 3 weeks before, we partnered with one of our teachers in opening in our old space on the 3rd floor a spa. So we literally opened up the spa with our partners in that in February, and it's kind of like that's reopened now too. And people are coming, man. It's we've been very fortunate in that regard. So
what's the name of your studio? Like, let's get a name drop going here.
Yeah, I was gonna say we've been talking about it, and I haven't even said the name. It's called The Movement, and it's on South Main Street in Allentown,
New Jersey, not PA.
Yes, not PA. Allentown, New Jersey, and it's in the old mill building.
It's a very fine building, and I have some ties to it. We talked about it previous to cutting on, but my family was using the same space that Chris is in right now to use as a art framing business, and I'm talking about in the 80s and early 90s. So it's just interesting to know that he has taken over the space, and our lives just continue to entangle.
You're gonna have to come and visit it and get your stretch on, man.
I was going to come there just like 2 weeks ago. I actually was at the pizza place that Church Street tees up to. I can't remember the name of it, but DiMattia's, yes. So a friend of mine hit me up, and he was like, "Yo, you got to come check out the tomato pie here, because I'm a Papa's guy," and they were like, "We've been to Papa's, we've been to D-Lo's. Come out here and try out DiMattia's." And I'm going to tell you, DiMattia's, while it's not my favorite, it's very good. So, I would never say, no, I won't go there again. I would go there again. So the next time I show up there, now that your space, it was before the spaces were open, I'll stop by.
Yeah, man. You got to come in.
Planning to. Just hang out, check it out. And, if I ever get motivated enough, I've been telling my friend Tony that I want to take a yoga class, just because I feel like I could get some flexibility out of it that I've completely lost as an adult. Like, I can barely touch the floor at this point if I'm standing and bent at the waist, and not just because I'm fat, because my hamstrings just won't allow it to happen.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like a lot of people think I got too much weight on to do yoga and this, that, and the other thing. That has nothing to do with your flexibility. There are literally people of all shapes, sizes, weights, ages that come and take these classes. And I remember when the first yoga classes that I took, I went and I took my wife's class when she was just teaching, before we had all this. And, I was like, I'm fairly fit, you know what I mean? I'm not like jacked or anything like that. I'm definitely not athletic, but it's like, I could do this, no problem. And there were there was like an 80-year-old woman on the mat next to me, like banging through these poses, yawning. And I am sitting there pulling just pools of sweat on the floor. I'm like sucking wind. It's a workout, man.
I mean, my first introduction to the idea of yoga and understanding what it could do for the body was actually Madonna. Like, she was the first person in my worldview, my personal worldview, that was espousing the effects and the things you can get out of doing yoga. I unabashed Madonna fan up to the living the prayer
like a
song.
prayer,
like a prayer. Yeah, up through that point, I'm good. After that, I don't give a shit. I don't care at all. But I'm a fan up to that point. So like I heard her talking about it, and I'm like, maybe I'll check that out one day. I mean, it's 30 years later. I still haven't checked it out, but I'm more aware of what it is. Maybe one day I'm going to come in there.
We're closer to that one day.
We are much closer to that one day. I mean, I'm at the point where I've talked about wanting to do it, not just checking it out. So I need to actually just turn the corner and do it, because I feel like, it would be a good way to get some flexibility back, even though that's not necessarily the specific thing that you'll get from it, but you will get that benefit.
Oh, yeah. You certainly will. Yeah.
But I also think that it would be a good workout to add on to actually lifting.
100%. I mean, like, it definitely will point out where you have muscle imbalances. It'll show you where you think you're doing things correctly with traditional lifting, and show you where you are weak.
Okay.
Like stuff like, take for instance your balance. Like, like I came to find out that like my right side is much, much weaker than my left, which I was very surprised at, because my left is where I broke my foot. So I thought that would be my weak side as far as like legs go and stuff. Totally
not even okay.
And it's a good workout too, in the sense that, like, aside from that it can be very relaxing. It's also, you don't have that impact on your joints the way you do with like traditional lifting. And as we're getting older, you got to watch out for that shit.
I am getting older. Every morning I try to get out of bed, and I'm just like, I don't think it's going to work today. Today is going to be the day that I'm going to become Charlie's grandfather, and just be stuck in the bed for 30 years.
Well, this quarantine stuff doesn't help either.
Not at all. Like, so for me, I've been home since March 9th. So I don't even wear pants half the time. Like, I'm in like sweatpants or shorts, and I have a t-shirt, and then I have like a work shirt down here that I could just throw on if I have an important meeting. But otherwise, I'm living the life right now of a complete and total slob. My desk is littered in like sparkling water bottles, like cups from drinks that I dragged down the stairs. I've cut the soda out because like I was killing myself for the first like 3 or 4 weeks, just like guzzling soda. And I'm like, I can't do this forever, because I'm gonna literally just die of sugar overdose sitting at this desk.
Well, that combined with lack of activity is just no good. I'm
not gonna fit in any of my clothes, because I won't even know if my clothes fit, because I'm wearing nothing. So then you go to put on your jeans, and you're like, these suckers are goddamn tight. What happened? And I'm like,
why did all of my jeans get small?
Yeah, I must have messed them up in the washing machine. I must have washed them on hot and dried them on hot, and they shrunk. It's not me. It's the machine. No, it's me.
Logical explanation.
Yeah.
It's going to be bad when it's time to put the work clothes back on.
Oh, God. You know what? I'm lucky. My office doesn't really care that much. I wore jeans and like a button down, but my button down was typically a flannel. Like, I would just throw a flannel over a t-shirt, and as long as I didn't have like, Satan's head popping out of the top of the shirt, they didn't really give a shit that it wasn't my office wasn't that stringent. And I've been lucky that over the last 14 years of working, only 3 of them I had to actually get dressed up.
Nice.
So, like, I'm actually really just not used to having to look presentable at this point. Like, I don't shave my head, I don't shave my face, I got a neck beard. Like, who cares anymore? Like, life is over because I'm stuck in the house.
Oh my God, that's funny.
Just to kind of like wrap this all together, the connection between working out, yoga, and music, how do they all fit together for you, Chris?
For me, it all comes back to physical health and mental health. Because I mean, you think about when you listen to music, and you know, maybe sometimes you got to think back to when you first fell in love with music. What was it about, particularly, you know, the aggressive music? Like, what did it do for you? It's a release, right? It makes you feel something that it just speaks to you. It makes you feel normal. It takes the volume, and even though the volume's loud in your head, it turns the volume down. And to me, that's what fitness has always done too, whether it's lifting weights or yoga or, you know, any combination of the 3. It all comes back to a lot of times when I would go to the gym and I would be lifting and stuff like that, you know, I would see people in the gym, and those brief gym conversations you have, you know, like, what are you working today? I'm like, I'm working my mind. You know, this is a mental health workout. I am just leaving it, just getting it all out, leaving it behind. And that's always been the same thing with music too.
Yeah, you know? For me, it's like, I would agree that it's a way to turn off the internal hate machine. Like, like that noise that you're talking about, for me, that noise is me hating myself. And like, playing music, going and playing a show, or just going to a show and like moshing, whatever you want to call it, or just enjoying like a band putting on a great performance, or when I was going and working out, or if I get myself like really focused on making a dish in the kitchen, like anything to just turn off the hate machine.
Yeah,
I 100% agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, it all ties together. It all ties together, and like I said, for me, it all comes back to, you know, that focus on self, on self-care. Right. You know, self-care through aggressive music, self-care through lifting weights. It's all about taking care of yourself.
Like last night, we were talking earlier about how I didn't sleep last night, and when I did sleep, I had a dream about the worst job I've ever had. Like the boss that is the bane of my existence when it comes to work. Anytime I'm like extremely stressed and can't sleep, that's what I dream of. And he was in my dream last night, and I woke up right in the middle of it. And then I started looking for something in my computer, and I'm typing on Google Docs, and his name comes right up. That's the same morning, and I'm like, this fucker won't get out of my goddamn head.
That's the worst.
And like, it's really just because I'm stressed. Like, that's all really what it comes down to. And I haven't been playing music, and I haven't been working out, and I haven't really been cooking anything, so it's just building up on me. So I need to do something soon.
All those outlets aren't there right now.
Yep. And like, I'm looking at half the things I mix, and I'm just like, I think I'm going to sell all my recording equipment. I'm going to sell it all. I'm just fucking done with this, because like, you know, that hate machine is just in there poking at you, telling you you're not that good at it. You're never going to be good at it. And I just need something to turn it off.
Yeah. That negative self-talk, that evil little gnome that lives in you.
Yeah.
That would talk about like quarantine. Like I was going to the gym like 4 days a week. You know, again, I'm not like some jacked up gym rat or anything like that, but I love it. I absolutely love it. And then quarantine hits, and I'm like, all gyms closed. Like,
and they've in New Jersey, they've stayed closed.
Yeah.
In New York, New York City for sure, they're still closed.
Yeah. So I was like doing some straight Rocky Balboa shit in my basement. I'm like, it's like Rocky 4. I'm like getting ready to fight Drago.
You got the log.
Like, yeah. I'm like, I have like heavy bottles of water, like those big jugs of water, and I'm like laying on a yoga mat on the concrete floor, doing like presses with water and stuff like that. It's like
just to feel something. I gotta feel something.
That's what people have been doing. Listen, I've seen a lot of pro wrestlers doing that stuff now because they don't have a gym to go to, so they just gotta make it work somehow.
And that's their job. They have to.
Yeah.
They just got a bunch of random stuff in their basement.
I'm just gonna lift this. It's heavy.
Lifting water jugs, just like you said. It's like, got to do something.
I'm just gonna go downstairs and lift the washing machine full.
I'm like trying to do pull-ups hanging under my basement stairs.
Dude, you know what? My basement is 8.5 or 9 feet high, so it's not too bad. And there are spots where they've braced the what are those?
So the beams?
The beams. Yeah, they've braced the beams with a bar basically between them to keep them from bowing one way or the other. So I could easily just do pull-ups down there, but I'm lazy. That's really good. I'm just lazy.
I got lucky because John Molnar had some old set of weight plates and a bar at his house, at his parents' house.
Okay.
From like high school. He's like, dude, you can have these so you don't lose your mind. I'm like, oh, thank you. That guy, like, John saved me, absolutely saved me. But I'm still like, I have no bench. I'm like laying on the floor. My wife's like, that looks dangerous.
Okay, can I tell you about your Lord and Savior, Craigslist? You could probably get a bench for free.
That is true.
Not these days, man. People know the value of what they have. It's like you see some rusted out bench, like torn up vinyl on it and stuff like that. No stuffing, like $600.
You never know, because let me tell you, I was out yesterday for the first time in God knows how long, and in the car with my girlfriend, I saw at least like 3 or 4 yard sales in my neighborhood.
I mean, you never know what you're going to find.
And I'm sure at least one of them had a weight bench. Because of course, I'm not thinking about a weight bench. I see, hey, they got records. Maybe we should stop.
So, to go to your point, just on the other side of this wall, there is 450 pounds of weights in varying plate sizes, a bench, and 2 bars, unset up.
Stop it.
No joke. So I got in my mind, I was like, all right, I'm going to start working out. And maybe it was like 5 years ago or whatever. And my friend was giving them away. She was like, my husband doesn't use these anymore. Do you want them? And I was like, I do. So then I jammed my car so full that I was basically doing a wheelie on the way home because I didn't want to leave them there and have her change her mind or have him change his mind. So I just took them all at once. And then I loaded them all into the basement, and then they got covered up by stuff. And I unearthed them 2 weeks ago with the mindset that I'm going to set the bench up, but I haven't done it yet. Because I need some fucking motivation mentally. Like, I'm so low on, like, just the will to do something like that I haven't pulled myself out to go on the other side of the fucking wall and just set the fucking bench up and lift something.
I'm about to shut down the studio and head over to the other side of your wall right now.
Come by. Carmichael's gym, it's like average Joe's, but you got to set the weights up yourself. And I won't throw a wrench at you, I promise.
Oh boy.
Well, Chris, this has been super informative. Like, I feel like even though I've known you for 25 years, that I know you way better after this couple hours.
This has been fun, man. This has been awesome.
It's been a good time talking about, the record store days.
Yeah, man.
The good old days.
So I'm going to hit you with one last question.
Uh-oh.
If you can, 5 records you would suggest our listeners to listen to.
Oh, God. All right.
They could be from anything.
No limits.
No limits.
No limits at all.
Okay. In no particular order. Sick of It All, Scratch the Surface. Iron Maiden, Live After Death.
Nice.
Misfits, Walk Among Us. Man, you're killing me here. You're killing me. What am I at? 3?
Yeah.
That's 3.
Any genre?
Anything.
Jesus,
Anything.
Dude,
No limits.
You should have emailed me this. Give me some time.
No way. There's got to be one off the cuff question.
On the spot.
Oh, boy. John Coltrane, Love Supreme.
Ooh, that's
Nice.
a solid one.
Nice.
I'm trying to think outside of my usual listening. Most music I listen to these days is I have headphones on and when I'm like exercising, so it's always something really aggressive. So, gotta throw them in there. They have to be in there because I think they're the absolute godfathers of hardcore. Bad Brains, Rock for Life.
All right.
Nice.
That is a solid list.
I agree.
And honestly, listeners, if you haven't listened to John Coltrane, give it some time. Let it sink in. It is not a singular listen. You can't just listen to it once and think you got it. You got to give that some time.
Coolest Coltrane story I ever heard, real quick, before we go. Somebody, like some musical scholar, had taken one of John Coltrane's solos, one of his improvised solos, and painstakingly transcribed it, like wrote it out for him and brought it to him and asked him to play it. And Coltrane looked at it and said, "Nah, man, that's too hard." That's my all-time favorite Coltrane story. He's like, no way.
That not unbelievable in any way.
Oh,
that is
not at all.
definitely had to be true. That was no bullshit right there.
Exactly.
Oh, well, at the Upgrade, it's always no bullshit. We come here, we talk about the truth, we talk about our lives, and we just try to dig a little bit deeper, help upgrade our minds. I'm Len Carmichael from Landmine Studios. Our guest has been Chris Frashella. He runs which studio? Say it again for the people.
The Movement in Allentown, New Jersey.
You guys have social media?
Yep. Yeah, we are on Instagram. It's The Movement by CF, my initials, which is also my wife's initials. She's Chrissy Frashella.
And I'm always joined by the esteemed Gary Muttley.
Yes. And I disagree with you because pretty much all we do is bullshit and bullshit and bullshit some more.
Hey, whatever makes it
point to our bullshit.
Yeah, whatever makes the dream work, bud.
There is a point to our bullshit. We don't just randomly bullshit. We actually have a point.
What point is it? I haven't found it yet.
I mean, it varies from week to week. At least we're not angry this week, okay?
No anger this week. I'm angry enough that I don't need to be angry on the show.
Yes, Chris, thank you so much for being on.
Dude, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's a fun time, and we will probably have you on again in the future.
Yeah, if you're willing to come.
Yeah, we're gonna have people back on and just talk about random shit, and I'm sure you got more record store stories because I love that stuff.
Yeah, dude.
Because to me, that's like the prime time. I think that era in the 90s there. I mean, now record stores just don't exist. So there's
kids these days don't even know how to even get music. Like
kids these days,
there's no work involved.
Even though the record stores exist, they don't operate the same way for the shopper. You know what I mean? It's like they know what they want. They're gonna go get it there. It's like
no. It used to be a total free for all back then, and that was the best part of it. And now it's just totally different world. So
it's a whole new vibe.
I remember going to the record collector on Broad Street. Do you remember when he was on Broad Street, Len?
Yep.
He's in Bordentown now, but when he was on Broad Street, I used to walk there from my house, which was a hike.
Yeah, that's a solid hike.
Yeah,
Like-
so I'd walk all the way there, and just to, like, I would buy the one thing I knew I wanted, and then I would look through his 7-inches. 7-inches were like, samplers to me. It's like, oh, I'm going to get a bunch of, like, it's like a sampler dish. I'm going to try this out. Oh, this cover looks weird. This is offensive looking enough. I'm going to grab this too. And that's how you bought stuff. There was no...
That's true. It was either that or looking through the thank you lists.
Yep, that's what I was going to say.
Do that all
Thank
the
you
time.
lists or yeah.
Or you read, like I said with Faith No More, you read an article. It's like, oh, hey, they're friends with Metallica. Yeah, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah. Or I remember seeing Mike Patton back in the day wearing a Godflesh t-shirt. I'm like, Godflesh? That sounds wacky.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to check that out.
Then I listened to Godflesh. I'm like, oh my God. This is amazing.
Yep. Stuff like that. But that was, pre-internet when you had to actually do a little bit of work to find stuff.
Yeah.
It wasn't
And then-
spoon-fed to you.
And then you buy 3 records, and then you don't even know what they sound like. You just heard about them, and then like, okay, one might suck, but then you got a whole bunch of new stuff that's still cool as shit,
And you try to convince yourself that the one that sucks probably doesn't suck as much as you think it did.
No, then you put it away, and then you go back to it 6 months later, and you're like, holy shit, why did I think this sucked?
You just weren't ready. You weren't ready.
Yeah.
You hadn't upgraded your mind to get to that point.
Exactly. You needed that time. All right. Thank you guys for listening. The upgradepodcast.net is where you can find all of our fun stuff, how to listen on different platforms and stuff like that. And that's it. We will see you guys again soon.
Take care, guys.